You were taught to stay calm by ignoring your feelings, to stay positive by pretending everything is fine. But if that really worked, why do so many people who try it still wake up tired, exhausted, and lost in their own thoughts? Why do smiles feel so fake? Why does peace never last long? The truth is that peace cannot be found in silence alone. It lies in mindfulness. And true positivity? It's not about pretending that bad things don't exist. It's about training the mind to see clearly even in the darkness. This is where Buddhism comes in. For thousands of years, Buddhist wisdom has shown people how to find stability in an uncertain world. How to smile, not because life is perfect, but because the mind is free. It teaches a different kind of strength, not loud, not forced, but unshakable, quiet power, gentle resilience, true peace. And tonight, when you lie down and let these words guide you, you will begin to feel it. The chaos inside you will settle. The noise will fade away. Not because the problems disappear, but because you stop clinging to them so tightly. And when you wake up, you will feel it in your chest, your breath, your eyes. Lighter, clearer, stronger. This isn't just another sleep track. This is the beginning of a change you've needed for a long time. A return to the part of you that already knows how to stay calm, that already knows how to be happy without any reason. Are you ready? Then let's begin. And now that the truth is out there, now that you understand that it's not about escaping your mind, but returning to it with peace, there's one place we need to start. Not with more thinking, not with another strategy, but with your breath, this silent action that has accompanied you since your first moment, often ignored, but always holding the key to stillness. This is where it begins, with letting go, one gentle breath at a time. Some evenings, the weight of the day feels like it's stuck to your chest, not heavy in a visible way, but in the tightness of your breath, the restlessness of your legs, the way your mind clings to every unfinished conversation, every missed deadline, every little moment when things didn't go as planned. This kind of tension doesn't just disappear by telling yourself to relax. It takes something gentler, something deeper. And in Buddhism, the answer begins with awareness of the breath, not just as a function of the body, but as a gateway to liberation. Letting go doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending the day didn't happen. It means loosening your grip. The mind holds on without you even noticing. It replays what went wrong over and over again. It argues with what has already happened. It resists reality as if it had the power to rewrite it. And all this resistance is stored not only in thoughts, but also in the nervous system, in the breath, in the way the shoulders rise a little too high before going to sleep. That's why Buddhist breathing exercises are not about controlling your breath. They are about observing it, feeling it, trusting it to bring you back to the present moment. Because in truth, the body already knows how to calm itself. It is programmed to do so. But most people never pause long enough to listen to it. When you lie in bed, the exercise begins by noticing how you breathe. Not by changing anything, just noticing. Is your breath shallow? Is it hurried? Is your body holding it back as if it were a question you don't want to answer? This awareness alone begins to release the tension. As soon as you become aware of your breath, it begins to slow down naturally. It deepens on its own. And something changes. not just in your lungs, but in your entire emotional system. Buddhist monks call this non-clinging. The breath flows in, it flows out, and there is no clinging to either. Breathe in without forcing, breathe out without pausing. And this rhythm, practiced gently, begins to teach the mind a new truth, that letting go does not mean losing something. It means returning to what is real, here and now. When this awareness of the breath is combined with non-attachment, something even deeper begins to happen. The mind begins to realize that the events of the day no longer need to be carried around. You don't have to replay that conversation. You don't have to calculate what should have been done differently. You don't have to fix the past. Because with every exhalation, the nervous system sends a message to the mind. It's okay to let go now. You are safe. One of the most powerful Buddhist teachings on this comes from the Satipatthana Sutta, where mindfulness of breathing is presented not as a relaxation technique, but as a path to insight. Each breath becomes a teacher. Notice the inhalation, notice the exhalation, and gradually realize that what you thought was permanent, your stress, your thoughts, your identity, is actually constantly changing. This subtle awareness is called anicca, impermanence, and it is more than just a concept. It is a felt experience. The feeling you get when a tense breath softens, when the worry that seemed so urgent an hour ago now feels like a memory without sharp edges. That is impermanence, and when you encounter it through your breath, you begin to trust that whatever you are feeling right now will not last forever. This knowledge brings peace faster than any mantra. Another tool from the Buddhist tradition is the gentle naming of resistance. As you breathe, you may notice that the mind is trying to pull you back into tension, back into the loop. A thought about something someone said, a worry about tomorrow, a repetition of something unfinished. Instead of fighting it, gently name it, thinking, worrying, remembering, and return to your breath. This simple act dissolves identification. The thoughts are not you. The breath brings you back. Interestingly, science now confirms what Buddhism has known for centuries. Deep, conscious breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural brake. It lowers cortisol levels. It slows the heart rate. It shifts the body from fight or flight mode to rest and digest mode. What science cannot fully grasp, however, is the spiritual dimension of this change. The quiet joy, the clarity, the unspoken feeling that something sacred is happening when you just sit there, breathe, and let go of the world. In Buddhist monasteries, mindfulness of the breath is not just for stress reduction. It serves enlightenment. The breath is a gateway to the present moment, and the present moment is the only place where liberation is possible. That is why this exercise is not about forcing the mind to stop. It is about being so present with the breath that thoughts lose their influence. They pass by like clouds, and you no longer chase after them. For people who have difficulty falling asleep, this exercise can be revolutionary. Instead of lying in bed trying to force your mind to be still, focus your attention on your breath. Not the breath as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. Welcome each breath. Let each exhalation go. You don't have to do anything else, and in this simplicity, peace begins to unfold. Conscious breathing at the end of a busy day also has something deeply emotional about it, because often we hold on not only to events, but also to feelings. Disappointment, shame, guilt, the feeling of not having done enough, that something is unresolved. In Buddhist thinking, these feelings are not mistakes to be eliminated. They are invitations to return. Each one is a call to be present, to feel it without judgment, to let it arise, to let it go. And this is where one of the most beautiful teachings comes into play: non-resistance. This is not the same as giving up. It is not apathy. It is the understanding that when we stop fighting against what is, the mind relaxes. It opens up. It breathes again. Non-resistance is like opening a fist that has been clenched all day long. It is the deep sigh after hours of holding everything together. It is the moment when you give yourself permission to just be. That is why there is no goal in Buddhist breathing exercises. You don't breathe to achieve something. You don't try to become calm. You simply become aware. And it is this shift from effort to awareness that changes everything. Because in truth, the calm was always there. It was just covered by noise. Imagine your breath as water removing dust from a mirror. With each breath, the reflection becomes clearer. Not because you are forcing it, but because you have stopped creating more clutter. That's what letting go feels like. Not dramatic, not intense, just pure, clear, free. And here's something else most people don't know. Breath awareness can be practiced in tiny moments, not just in long meditations. Even now, as you lie in bed, just take a deep breath in and slowly breathe out. That's it. That's the exercise. You've just returned, and you can do it again and again, until sleep is no longer a struggle, but a natural continuation of the calm you have created. In Buddhist sleep rituals, monks often do a short breathing meditation before lying down, not to get anywhere, but to leave the day behind, to acknowledge that everything that happened today is over. It belongs to the past. The breath is new now, fresh, alive, and with that breath, the body lets go, the mind lets go, and rest becomes a friend again. So when your chest feels tight, let it rise and fall slowly. When your mind feels full, let it float with your breath. If the day feels unfinished, trust that nothing is ever truly finished. And that's okay, because right now, you're not here to solve problems. You're here to soften, to smooth out the rough edges, to return to the part of you that doesn't need to change anything to feel at peace. That part of you has always known how to breathe. As soon as your breath returns, as soon as the weight of the day lifts and your mind stops clinging to everything it can't change, something subtle emerges, a kind of softness that doesn't come from relaxation alone, but from letting go. And in this letting go lies a quiet joy, not loud, not chasing after something without needing proof, just there, glowing quietly beneath the surface. That is our next goal, the kind of joy that doesn't strive for anything. Most people are trained to seek joy in the same way they seek attention, success, or validation. We are taught this from an early age. Feel better by getting something. A new toy, a reward, a compliment. And so the mind, wired by habit, begins to believe that joy comes only from external things. That happiness must be earned or bought or found in the next experience. But this belief becomes a trap, because the moment the joy subsides, the chase begins again. The next reward, the next kick, the next distraction. And over time, this constant striving leads to restlessness, a mind that is always striving for something, never at peace, always searching for a high that disappears the moment it arrives. Buddhism speaks of a different kind of joy. It is called sukha, not pleasure, not thrill, sukha, a calm, lasting, inner joy that does not depend on circumstances. It is not about the climax, but about the depth beneath it. Sukha does not swell. It lasts. It does not demand more. It is already whole. And unlike temporary pleasure, it does not collapse after rising. To understand sukha, you first need to clearly recognize what it is not. It is not the sugar rush after a victory. It is not the laughter that masks a weary soul. It is not scrolling through hundreds of posts in search of something that makes you feel alive. These things are part of life, but they are not permanent. And what is not permanent cannot bring peace. Buddhism teaches that the pursuit of pleasure is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become, and the body, the nervous system, begins to burn out from the constant stimulation. But sukha is not triggered. It is revealed, like a calm lake that reveals itself after the surface has stopped moving. One of the most powerful teachings on the Buddhist path is that sukha is already there. It's just hidden beneath the noise of desire, the noise of comparison, the noise of wanting something other than what is. Desire is the first flame that burns away inner peace. It is the quiet voice that says, "That's not enough." It can disguise itself as ambition, self-improvement, or harmless preferences, but at its core, it whispers, "Not yet, not here, not that." And as long as that voice has the upper hand, sukha cannot be felt, because sukha lives in the opposite space, the space that says, "This is enough, this is already whole, I don't need anything else to feel joy." This shift from pleasure to sukha is not about avoiding life. It is about experiencing it more fully. When desire subsides, the details come alive. The sound of the wind, the warmth of a blanket, the weight of your body sinking into rest. Things that used to feel ordinary now feel sacred, because you no longer crave anything else. You are present, and presence opens the door to joy. In Buddhist practice, the cultivation of sukha begins with mindfulness. You notice what draws your mind to desire. You notice when your heart longs for the next thing. Even small moments, the sudden urge to check your cell phone, the quick impulse to distract yourself from discomfort. Each of these moments is an opportunity to return, a moment to pause and ask, is this a pursuit of joy, or is it covering up something I don't want to feel? This question is powerful because it breaks the cycle. It creates space between impulse and action, and in this space, the seed of sukha can grow. Because sukha does not flourish under pressure, it needs space, silence, simplicity. It comes when you stop pushing. Monks in the forest tradition often speak of this joy that arises after deep meditation, but not because they have achieved something. It comes when everything unnecessary has fallen away. There is nothing to fix, nothing to prove, just the breath, the moment, the silence. And from this silence, joy radiates, not like fireworks, but like a sunrise that you can feel without looking at it. Modern life pushes this kind of joy far away. So much is based on stimulation, noise, notifications, the next thing. But Buddhism teaches that the world is not the problem. The problem is striving. Because even in a quiet room, the mind will race if it is trained to do so. That is why sukha begins with training, not in the world, but in the heart. Training it to be okay here, with what is, without waiting for something better. This is not passivity, it is mastery. Because when you can find joy in silence, in simplicity, in the stillness between thoughts, you become free. You are no longer controlled by events. You are no longer a puppet controlled by excitement. You have rooted yourself in something deeper, and that is the essence of sukha. In Buddhism, there is a practice called mudita, the joy that arises when you see others happy. It is closely related to sukha because it is a joy that has nothing to do with yourself. You are simply happy because there is happiness, no jealousy, no comparisons, just joy in well-being. And that reveals a deeper truth. Sukha is often blocked not by a lack of pleasure, but by envy, resentment, or the belief that you are missing something. So part of cultivating sukha is removing these inner barriers, noticing when the heart contracts, when it begrudges another's joy, when it believes it should be somewhere else, and to soften in those moments, to return to the breath, back to the now, and to let go of the illusion that happiness exists outside of you. Buddhist psychology also introduces the concept of the 5 hindrances, mental patterns that cloud clarity and prevent sukha. Sensual desire is one of them. Restlessness, hostility, sloth, and doubt are the others. But desire is often the loudest, and it is insidious. It does not scream, it whispers. It says, just one more, just a little more, and it convinces you that joy is just one step away. But sukha does not respond to this voice. It does not rush. It does not chase. It waits, silently, until the chase stops. And when that happens, sukha emerges, not as an achievement, but as a memory. That peace is not found, it is remembered. Sleep is one of the best times to connect with sukha, because at night the outside world fades away. Distractions pause, and you are alone with your own mind. If that mind is always trained to seek stimulation, silence feels like emptiness. But when the mind has learned to rest in mindfulness, silence becomes a refuge, a sanctuary, and sukha can fill that space like warm light. That is why Buddhist monks consider sleep to be part of the path, not as a break from practice, but as its continuation. As a time to rest the body and train the mind to remain rooted in a joy that does not fade when the lights go out. A joy that is not shaken by dreams, fears, or past regrets. Just the quiet presence of consciousness resting in itself. And that's the best part. Anyone can achieve it. You don't have to be a meditation pro. You don't need the perfect environment. All you need is the willingness to stop chasing something, to stop believing the lie that something else will finally make you happy, and to start noticing the joy that is already there beneath all the striving. Every night before you go to sleep is an opportunity to do this. Gently ask yourself, what am I chasing? And what if this moment, right now, were enough. This simple reflection can change your entire nervous system. It can teach the mind that contentment is not boring, it is healing. And over time, the heart begins to recognize that sukha is not a retreat from life. It is the fullest experience of it. And when you wake up and your mind tries to run again, to tasks, to goals, to what is missing, you have a deeper place to return to. The quiet knowledge that joy does not need to be sought. It needs to be discovered, and you already know the way. And once the heart remembers the kind of joy that doesn't strive for anything, that doesn't depend on results or applause, a new kind of calm emerges. But to maintain this calm, especially when life changes or emotions run high, something deeper is needed. Not just inner joy, but also balance, a grounded center that remains stable through highs and lows. This brings us to one of the most powerful teachings of Buddhism. It's not about avoiding emotions or pretending that everything is fine. It's about equanimity, the middle path of mood. There is a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to smile all the time. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to convince others that everything is fine. It's the kind of strength that knows how to deal with what happens, without clinging to the good or running away from the bad. That's equanimity. And it's not just a spiritual ideal. It's the foundation of emotional stability. It's what holds you together when everything else is trying to tear you apart. Most people have been taught to deal with emotions like a roller coaster ride. When everything is going well, you're on the way up. You feel good. You celebrate. When something goes wrong, you crash. You break down. You worry. You try to escape. But these constant ups and downs don't bring happiness. They lead to exhaustion. Over time, the body begins to exhaust itself from the emotional fluctuations. The nervous system loses confidence in calm because it is never consistent, and slowly, even the good moments become permeated with fear because the mind knows they won't last. Buddhism offers a radical alternative. Not numbness to life, not denial of feelings, but a middle way. The ability to feel deeply without being carried away by it. The ability to allow both joy and pain without losing oneself in them. This is what equanimity trains. It does not erase emotions. It holds them with spaciousness, and in this spaciousness, something incredible happens. One stops demanding that every situation unfold the way one wants it to in order to feel peace. One of the biggest myths about positivity is that it means always being optimistic, that you always have to see the positive, say something nice, learn a lesson, or see the good. But this kind of forced positivity can be toxic. It creates pressure to suppress what you feel. It teaches you to repress sadness, ignore anger, or feel guilty for being upset. And if you do that long enough, the emotions don't go away. They continue to smolder. They erupt in other ways, as tension in the body, restless sleep, sudden anxiety for no reason. That's not peace. That's emotional avoidance. Serenity is something else. It says, you can be present with discomfort without having to fix it. You can allow joy without clinging to it. You can allow sadness without it destroying your inner home. It is an attitude of openness, not reaction. A willingness to be with what is, without adding extra layers of judgment or demands. To cultivate this kind of stability, the first step is mindfulness. Notice how your mood changes in real time. When everything is going according to plan, Does your mind start to grasp? Does it whisper, "I hope this stays this way"? This grasping is subtle fear, and it is the beginning of imbalance. On the other hand, when something difficult happens, does your mind tense up? Does it say, "This shouldn't be happening"? This resistance is the breeding ground for suffering. Equanimity arises in both situations and says, "This too, it's part of it. Not because it's pleasant, not because you enjoy it, but because it's part of life. And the more you resist reality, the more pain you cause. Instead, return to your breath. Feel what is there, and let go of the mental comments that try to control the story." In Buddhism, there is an expression, the 8 worldly winds. These are pairs of opposites, gain and loss, praise and blame, joy and suffering, fame and shame. The Buddha taught that these winds blow through every life, no matter how wise or strong you are. And if your peace depends on being blown in the direction you like, you will never be stable. But if you can remain rooted while the winds blow, that is true freedom. Think of a tree. When the wind picks up, the branches sway, but the roots hold fast. That is equanimity. You don't have to suppress your feelings, but your inner roots prevent you from being uprooted. You respond with mindfulness, but without panic. You feel your emotions fully, but you are not controlled by them. Another part of this exercise is understanding impermanence. Every emotion has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But when you fight against a feeling, it lasts longer. When you try to hold on to a good feeling forever, it slips away. Equanimity reminds you that everything is impermanent. Even the worst wave will rise over the crest and fall again. Even the most beautiful moment will change. That's not tragic, that's life. And when you trust that rhythm, you no longer have to live in fear of what comes next. That doesn't mean you don't care about anything. Equanimity is not cold detachment. It is not indifference. It is intense caring without losing yourself in it. You are fully present. You love deeply. But you know that holding on does not protect. It suffocates. And when you stop clinging, your love becomes freer. Your presence becomes deeper. Because you're not trying to bend life to your will. You take it as it is. In meditation, equanimity is cultivated by sitting with whatever arises, thoughts, sensations, emotions. You don't try to change them, you notice them. You say, "Ah, there's restlessness," or "there's sadness," and you observe how it comes and goes. This non-reactive observation trains the nervous system not to panic when things change. Over time, a calmness arises that does not depend on circumstances, and this calmness carries over into daily life. Relationships become more peaceful because you no longer depend on others to behave in a certain way for you to feel good. Work becomes less stressful because success no longer determines your worth. Even failures lose their sting because you no longer see them as proof of your inadequacy. You have freed yourself from the cycle of approval and rejection. You no longer measure your worth by your mood. You are rooted in something deeper. And this rootedness is not passive. It creates strength, because when you are no longer afraid to feel something difficult, you become fearless in a new way, not in the sense of recklessness, but in a calm way that says, "I can handle this. I don't have to run away." And when others around you lose their balance, you remain grounded. Your calmness becomes a beacon, not just for yourself, but also for others who are still caught in the storm. One of the most beautiful effects of serenity is clarity. When the mind is no longer clouded by emotional extremes, it sees more clearly. Decisions become wiser, communication becomes friendlier, boundaries become clearer. You no longer react, you respond. You are no longer driven by fear of missing out, of not being good enough, or of feeling pain. You have made peace with all of that, and in that peace, your joy deepens. Not ecstatic, but stable. Not flashy, but real. That is why equanimity is often compared to a mountain in Buddhist teachings. Strong, unimpressed by the weather, and yet full of life. The mountain feels the rain, the sun, the snow, but it does not collapse. It stands firm, and you can stand firm too. Start where you are right now. Pay attention to your mood as you lie in bed. Is your mind restless? Are you trying to stay calm? Do you wish you felt better? Just observe. Don't try to change anything. Gently name it and return to your breath. Feel the support of the bed. Let your body sink, and remember, this too is part of the journey. And when you wake up tomorrow, life may offer you something pleasant or something difficult. But with serenity, you no longer need to fear either, because you are learning to endure everything with grace. And in that grace lies strength. The strength to remain steadfast. The strength to remain true to yourself. The strength to live without fear of losing your peace. That is the true gift of the middle way. It does not promise constant joy, but it offers something even better, a calm that no mood can destroy, a stillness that no chaos can shake, and a clarity that carries you through life, one breath at a time. And when the emotional waves are calmed by equanimity, when the mind no longer rises and falls with every mood change, something else begins to stir, something gentle, something ancient. Beneath the need for control, beneath the effort to be balanced, there is a quieter longing, a longing for security, for care, not just from others, but from yourself. This is where kindness comes in, not as a weakness, but as medicine. And tonight, it becomes the most important tool of all, because what you feel in the moments before you fall asleep can influence how your body heals, how your mind recovers, and how your dreams unfold. This is where metta comes in. Kindness is not just a character trait. In Buddhism, it is a state of consciousness that can be trained, purposefully, cultivated like a fire that warms everything around it. And metta, or loving-kindness meditation, is one of the oldest and most effective practices for achieving exactly that. It not only calms the emotional body, but also speaks directly to the nervous system. It tells the brain, you are not in danger. You can rest safely. You can let go. The nervous system does not understand words as well as signals. Tension, racing thoughts, shallow breathing, all of these send the message that something is wrong. But when the heart softens, when the breathing slows down, when kindness fills the inner space, the body listens. And as it listens, it relaxes. Not because you told it to, but because it finally believes that it is okay to stop protecting itself. Metta begins with a simple sentence, a wish. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. It may feel strange at first, too gentle, maybe even silly. But that's only because most people haven't been taught how to speak lovingly to themselves. The voice in our heads is usually critical, cold, transactional. It points out mistakes, things that could be better, things that weren't enough. But the heart knows a different language. A language that doesn't demand perfection. A language that simply says, "You deserve peace," simply because you are alive. In metta practice, these phrases are repeated slowly and with full attention, not as affirmations to force a belief, but as gifts, like planting seeds in the soil of your own mind. The gentler they are planted, the deeper they take root. And each repetition sends a signal, not only to the mind, but also to the body. Studies have shown that metta meditation reduces stress hormones, inhibits inflammation, and even increases vagal tone, which is associated with resilience and emotional regulation. This is not just spiritual, it is biological. When you practice kindness consistently, the wiring of your nervous system changes. This is especially effective before bedtime. During the day, the body is in a constant state of alertness and security. The sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight mode, keeps you on high alert. This is useful in emergencies, but exhausting when it is constantly active. When the mind goes to sleep and is still on the lookout for danger, the body cannot relax completely. And even when sleep does come, it is light, restless, filled with dreams that feel more like puzzles than peace. However, when metta is practiced before bedtime, this basic attitude is reset. The heart rate slows down. The parasympathetic system, the part of the body responsible for rest and digestion, is activated. And in this shift, true rest begins, not only physically, but also emotionally. Kindness becomes the bridge between consciousness and sleep. The practice also has an outward effect. Once you have gently extended kindness to yourself, you extend it to others. First, to someone you love. Then to someone who is neutral toward you. Then to someone you have difficulty with. And finally, to all beings everywhere. This expansion trains the heart to soften its boundaries, to come out of isolation, to dissolve the silent hardness that builds up from daily tensions. This does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. It does not mean forcing love. It means recognizing our common humanity, that every being, just like you, wants to be happy, wants to feel safe. And when you realize this, your own pain softens. The sharp edges of resentment become blunt, and the nervous system feels less alone. This expansion also helps with unspoken fears. Many people carry silent guilt or unresolved tensions with them when they go to bed. Conversations that didn't go well, unspoken words. Kindness doesn't erase these things, but it holds them in place. It brings warmth where there was coldness. It brings compassion where there was judgment. And in doing so, it allows the body to let go of what it couldn't let go of before because of all the tension. Even the face changes. Tension in the jaw, forehead, and throat begins to release. Because kindness is not just a thought. It is a felt experience. An experience that flows through the body like a breath. And when this kindness becomes a habit, sleep is more than just a break. It becomes a kind of refuge, a healing chamber where every cell is allowed to rest in gentleness. For many, self-directed kindness is the hardest part, especially for those who have learned to be tough, assertive, and high-achieving. But in Buddhist practice, metta is not a luxury. It is a necessity. The Buddha himself taught it as a form of protection, as a way to protect the heart not with walls, but with warmth. Because a mind that rests in kindness is much less prone to falling into fear, regret, or self-condemnation. It is grounded, stable, and open. In modern psychology, metta is currently being researched as a tool for trauma recovery. This is because trauma often teaches the body to shut down, to distance itself, and even to fear calmness. However, when metta is introduced slowly and gently, it begins to teach the body what safety feels like again. Not safety through control, but safety through presence, through connection, through the feeling of being held by your own mindfulness. The phrases can be customized. If "may I be happy" doesn't feel right, you can start with "may I feel comfortable" or "may I be kind to myself." The goal is not to force a mood. It's about meeting yourself where you are and offering something gentler than what your inner critic is saying. Even the slightest change in tone makes a difference, and if there is resistance, that's okay too. The mind may say, "This is pointless," or "I don't deserve this." That's not failure. That's just the voice of old conditioning. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to believe it. Just return to the phrases. Return to your breath. Return to the warmth. And with repetition, something changes. It may start as a flicker, a small moment of lightness, a sigh that seems deeper than usual, a tiny moment when you feel yourself sinking a little deeper into the bed. This is the nervous system responding. This is the body saying, "Thank you," not with words, but with calm. The beauty of metta is that it requires no belief. You don't have to feel particularly spiritual. You don't have to have the perfect attitude. All you need is the willingness to give care to yourself, to others, to the world. And that willingness becomes the seed of change. Over time, it becomes a habit. You may find that you are less reactive during the day, less judgmental, more patient. Not because you are trying to be, but because you have trained your nervous system to remain calm under pressure. And this calmness becomes strength, a strength that does not collapse, a strength that does not disappear, but lasts. When sleep comes, the friendliness remains. The body, no longer on alert, releases its tension. The mind, no longer driven, rests in warmth. And the dreams that follow are different, not chaotic, not fearful, but filled with the mood you created just before falling asleep. This mood becomes your inner atmosphere, and over time, it shapes not only your nights, but also your days. Because the nervous system remembers. It remembers how you talk to yourself. It remembers how you calm down. And when kindness becomes your default setting, your world begins to change. Not because the world is changing, but because you are changing. So when you close your eyes, may you feel safe. May you feel secure. May your breath carry you to sleep like a gentle wave. And may the kindness you radiate tonight echo in every part of your being until peace is no longer something you wish for, but something you become. And as soon as the body regains confidence in safety, as soon as kindness flows like a balm through the nervous system and smooths the edges of tension, the mind also begins to calm down. But this silence can be fragile, especially when the sharp moments of the day come back at night. The unpleasant things that were said, the reactions that came too quickly, the feelings of regret that echo like echoes. This is where the practice of pause comes in, because while kindness calms, postponement protects. And tonight, we explore the Dharma of postponement, the sacred space between impulse and action. Before every reaction, there is a fraction of a second, a moment so brief that most people miss it. And in that gap lies the difference between peace and pain, between regret and wisdom. Buddhism teaches that this gap is not empty. It is sacred. It is powerful. And when you recognize it, it becomes a gateway to freedom from patterns that once seemed impossible to change. Reactivity is one of the deepest habits of the mind. It's not just about losing your temper or saying something harsh. Reactivity is an automatic loop. When something triggers a memory, a fear, or discomfort, and the body reacts without hesitation. It reacts too quickly. It shuts down. It reaches for the phone. It numbs itself. And later comes the regret. Not because the situation was wrong, but because the mind wasn't present enough to make a different decision. This happens because the nervous system is designed to protect us. When it perceives a threat, it reacts quickly. This can be useful in dangerous situations, but most of the time, we're not running away from tigers. We're running away from emotions. And when the body can't tell the difference, it reacts before the heart has a chance to speak. This is where Buddhist practice changes everything, because it teaches the art of pausing, the breath before the word, the silence before the action, the space in which wisdom has time to unfold. It's not about freezing or suppressing emotions. It's about becoming aware, feeling the tension before it erupts, feeling the discomfort without reacting to it, seeing the thought before you believe it. This is the Dharma of delay, not delay out of fear, but delay out of clarity. This pause may seem small, but it is not. It is a revolution, because when you pause, you regain your freedom of choice. The old habit does not win. The old script no longer determines the course of events. Something new becomes possible. And in that moment, when you feel the heat rising, but instead of reacting, you continue to breathe, true change begins. One of Buddha's most important teachings is the chain of dependent origination. It explains how suffering arises moment by moment through a series of links. Contact leads to feelings. Feelings lead to desire. Desire leads to attachment. Attachment leads to becoming. And so it goes on. But in the moment of feeling, that is exactly where the pause can take place. That is where the chain can be broken. You feel something, and instead of running away from it or acting on it, you stay with it. This staying puts the chain in check, and suffering loses its power. This pause isn't about thinking harder, it's about feeling deeper. Where is your breath right now? How does your chest feel? Is your body speeding up? Are your thoughts racing? These signals are clues. In Buddhist meditation, the practice is to become familiar with these clues. You learn to feel the first signs of reactivity, not to suppress them with force, but to recognize them clearly. Because awareness itself is a kind of medicine. When the light is on, the patterns lose their power. At night, when the body comes to rest, but the mind reviews the day, the absence of breaks becomes apparent. You see where you rushed, where you reacted irritably, where you avoided something, and the mind tries to rework it, reproduce it, repair it. This is where rumination thrives, in the rubble of reactions. But here's the secret. Regret does not bring healing. The past cannot be rewritten, but you can prepare for the future. And every pause you practice now is a seed for other reactions tomorrow. Buddhist practice does not demand perfection. It offers compassion. So when you think about moments you would have liked to have experienced differently, don't fall into self-reproach. Use them as training. Don't rewind to punish yourself, but to understand. What was going on inside you? What belief was triggered? What emotions came up too quickly to hold back? This careful reflection trains the mind to recognize such moments earlier next time. And every time you recognize them earlier, the pause becomes stronger. There is also the myth that quick reactions are a sign of strength, that speaking quickly, acting decisively, and being impulsive show self-confidence. But Buddhism turns this story on its head. True strength lies in restraint, not in holding back out of fear, but in remaining steadfast out of wisdom. Knowing that a delayed word can prevent hurt, that silence, when chosen consciously, can speak volumes, that not every impulse deserves your energy. This kind of strength does not shout. It does not explain itself. It simply waits, and in that waiting, it finds clarity. The training starts small. Pay attention when someone says something slightly annoying. Feel the heat rising. Don't act. Instead, breathe. Let it pass. Maybe talk about it later, maybe not at all. Pay attention when the urge to flee arises. Look at your phone, distract yourself, criticize someone silently. Pause. Don't judge. Just feel the pull. Let it be there. And breathe. Each of these micro breaks rewires the brain. They teach the mind that it doesn't have to obey every impulse, that it can observe without reacting. That presence is more powerful than speed. Over time, the nervous system recalibrates itself. The default response becomes slower, gentler, and in this space, deeper responses emerge. Perhaps a more thoughtful word, perhaps a question instead of a defense, perhaps just silence and a knowing smile. And these new responses change the world around you. Conflicts diminish, misunderstandings disappear, relationships deepen, because you are no longer adding fuel to the fire. In the evening, this pause exercise becomes a powerful ritual. When thoughts arise, when the mind repeats moments, recognize the pattern. Pause, breathe. Say to yourself, this moment is over. I can rest now, and return to your body. Feel the pillow, the blanket, your breath. When regret arises, meet it with kindness. When fear arises, meet it with space. Don't resolve anything, just feel. This is where the nervous system learns to rest. Buddhist monks often speak of the pause as the place where insight arises, for it is only in silence that truth can emerge. And the more you pause, the more you see, not just what happened, but also why. And this seeing is not hard, it is liberating, because it shows you that you are not stuck, that the cycle can be broken, that the script can be rewritten, breath by breath. The beauty of this practice is that it does not require complete silence or ideal conditions. You don't have to be in a temple. You don't need hours of free time. All you need is presence. And presence is always available, even in the middle of the night, even in the middle of a thought, even in the middle of your next breath. As you lie here now, feel this space between inhaling and exhaling. That is your window. That is your power. And tomorrow, when something upsets you, when the world urges you to hurry, remember this space, return to it. Let it hold you long enough to make a wiser decision. This is the Dharma of delay, a simple, sacred pause, and from it, everything can change. And once the habit of pausing takes hold, once you learn to interrupt the cycle and breathe between impulse and action, a deeper question emerges. What are we really clinging to? Why does the mind hold so tightly to control, to outcomes, to recognition, to stories that hurt us? The ability to pause opens the door to something even more transformative, learning to let go completely, not giving up, but letting go in a way that brings peace without disconnecting from life. This is where the practice of non-attachment begins, and it changes everything. A heaviness arises when the mind clings to everything it touches, expectations that become prisons, thoughts that become identities, emotions that define who we think we are, people we hold on to like lifelines, plans we cling to as if they were the only path to happiness. And all of this weighs heavily on the heart, not because the things themselves are wrong, but because we hold on to them so tightly. Buddhism does not say to stop caring. It does not teach detachment as a form of emotional numbness. What it teaches is non-attachment, a way of loving, feeling, acting, and living without being tied to things you cannot control. This is not avoidance. It is expansiveness. It is learning how to hold on without pushing, how to be present without needing to possess. And this change creates an inner lightness that nothing external can achieve. Non-attachment begins with mindfulness. It begins when you notice the subtle forms of holding on. The mind replays a conversation over and over because it didn't end the way you wanted it to. The heart waits for a message to feel good again. The breath becomes shallow because tomorrow won't go according to plan. These are not mistakes. They are habits. And the moment you clearly recognize them, your grip on them begins to loosen. The Buddha taught that suffering does not arise from pain itself, but from clinging to the idea that it should not be there, from clinging to the desire for different circumstances. When the mind insists that something must remain the same or never change, it suffers the moment change occurs, which it always will, because everything changes. That is not a failure, it is reality. And the mind that understands this can begin to move with life instead of fighting against it. This does not mean giving up your ambitions or withdrawing from relationships. It means changing your relationship to them. Instead of saying, "I need this to be happy," you say, "I'll do my best, but I won't base my worth on the outcome." This change alone creates peace, because when you stop clinging, you stop suffering when life doesn't go according to script. There is beauty in living light-heartedly, not fragile, not disconnected, simply unburdened, like walking with open hands instead of clenched fists. Life becomes more vibrant, more present, because you no longer carry the burden of yesterday or the demands of tomorrow with you. You are simply there, with what is. What is often misunderstood is that not holding on increases intimacy. When you don't hold on to people out of fear, you love more honestly. You listen without planning your defense. You support without expecting anything in return. You let people be who they are without wanting to change them. And strangely enough, this freedom deepens the connection, because people feel safer in the presence of presence than under pressure. The same applies to emotions. When you hold on to a mood, whether good or bad, you get stuck. The joy fades and you chase after it. The sadness remains and you identify with it. But when you allow emotions to arise and pass without labeling them as me or mine, they move on. They change form. They complete their cycle. And what remains is awareness, still, observing, unmoved. Non-attachment is also a tool for healing. So many wounds remain open because they are shrouded in mental stories. The resentment, the self-reproach, the narrative that says, "That should never have happened." And although pain must be felt in order to be healed, holding on to it keeps it alive. When you let go of the story, not the experience, but the hold you have on it, something is released. Space opens up, and that space allows grief to become wisdom. Anger becomes clarity. Loss becomes presence. This doesn't mean you no longer have preferences or care how things turn out. It means you no longer base your peace on them. You can continue to plan, work hard, and love deeply. But you learn to let go of the outcome, to let things unfold. And that trust, not blind trust, but trust in impermanence, becomes a form of quiet strength. In meditation, non-attachment is practiced by observing the breath or thoughts without clinging to them. When a thought arises, you don't push it away, but you don't follow it either. You observe it as it arises, remains, fades away. The same applies to sensations. The same applies to emotions. Over time, this trains the nervous system to no longer react to every flicker of the mind, and this inner stability carries over into daily life. This can be seen in traffic when someone cuts you off and you simply drive on instead of reacting. It can be seen when plans change and you simply adapt instead of panicking. It shows up in relationships when a friend disappoints you and, instead of spiraling downward, you remain open. This lightness does not mean indifference. It means that you don't carry every moment around with you like a burden. You flow with life instead of trying to shape it. There is also freedom in letting go of roles. The idea that you have to be seen in a certain way, that you always have to be productive, impressive, and helpful. Clinging to your identity is one of the hardest forms of suffering. But when you realize that you are not your job, your title, your past mistakes, or your hopes for the future, when you let go of the need to be anyone at all that remains is simple presence. And presence is where peace resides. Non-attachment can also change how you deal with uncertainty. When the future is uncertain, the mind often clings to it all the more. It paints scenarios. It imagines outcomes. It prepares for things that may not even happen. But none of this brings control. It only creates stress. Non-attachment invites a different approach, accepting the unknown as it is, preparing where necessary, but not obsessing over it, resting in uncertainty without sinking into fear. And this kind of peace is rare, but it is available right now, in this breath. There is a common theme in Buddhist stories. The tighter you hold on to something, the more pain it causes, whether it's a desire, a belief, or a person. And letting go, even if it's scary, brings relief. Not because you've lost something, but because you've stopped squeezing it to death. What you hold loosely stays longer. What you hold tightly often breaks. And the exercise doesn't have to be complicated. Start with small things. Pay attention when your mind says, "I can't relax until this is done." Pause. Ask yourself, is that true? Can you still take care of it? Still act, but without the tension? Then try it with expectations. That should have gone differently. Can you accept what happened without additional commentary? Every time you let go, you gain something. Not more things, but more space, more peace, more freedom. In the evening, when you are preparing for sleep, this exercise becomes even more effective. This is because the mind often brings all its attachments with it. Unfinished plans, unresolved emotions, unfulfilled desires. And the body feels this burden. But you don't have to resolve everything before going to sleep. You can let go. Tell yourself, "Not now, I can find peace without answers." And return to your breath. Return to the gentleness of this moment. This one gesture is non-attachment in motion. This is freedom. And over time, it becomes more than a technique. It becomes a way of life. You move a little more easily through the world. You deal with people, experiences, and even pain more elegantly. Because you have stopped trying to make everything permanent. You have stopped demanding that life follow your script. And in this surrender, something beautiful emerges. Joy. Not from what happens, but from the ease with which you can go through everything. That is the power of non-attachment. Not cold detachment, but the peace of a heart that can hold without grasping, that can feel without drowning, that can live without being obsessed with anything that touches it. That is what it means to stay light. That is what it means to flow. And as soon as you loosen your grip, as soon as you stop clinging to what you thought had to stay in place, emotions begin to move differently. They are not blocked, they are not held back, they are not exaggerated or suppressed. They begin to move as they were always meant to. And in that movement, something else becomes clear. It was never about getting rid of feelings. It was about learning to see them for what they are. Not facts, not identities, but weather. Temporary, changeable, and completely natural. The next exercise teaches the mind to see emotions not as who you are, but as temporary experiences in a much bigger sky. There are days when sadness doesn't just feel like a feeling, but like your entire identity. When fear doesn't just pass, but becomes the lens through which you see the world. The idea that it is temporary is lost, and instead it feels permanent, defining, and all-consuming. That is the danger of identification. The moment the mind says, "I am angry," instead of "anger is present," it merges with the emotion. The emotion doesn't just happen, it becomes personal, and from that point on, it's hard to see clearly, hard to act wisely, hard to feel hope. Buddhism offers a radical shift in perception. It teaches that emotions are not the problem. The problem is misunderstanding them. When you believe that every mood defines your truth, suffering begins. But when you view emotions as weather, clouds, wind, rain, sunlight, fog, passing through the open sky of consciousness, they lose their power. They are still felt, still respected, but they no longer control you. And in that space, peace returns. Not because the emotion has disappeared, but because you have stopped confusing it with yourself. This practice is called non-identification, and it begins with mindfulness, with becoming aware when the mind clings to a feeling and gives it a name. I'm depressed. I'm a failure. I can't do this. These statements feel true, but they are not. What is true is this: a wave of sadness is there, a wave of fear is rising, a tightness is spreading in your chest. That is honest, that is direct, and it creates space between you and the emotion. In that space, freedom arises. The mind tends to narrate everything it feels, and these narratives stick, especially if they come from the past. This always happens. I'll never be okay. There's something wrong with me. But these thoughts are not the truth. They are habits, stories that formed long ago, and when emotions arise, the mind falls back on the same script. Non-identification means recognizing the script but not believing it, seeing the emotion but not becoming it. When you start to view emotions as weather, something changes in your body. A storm of anger may pass through, but you don't tense up. A fog of doubt may cloud your mind, but you don't panic. You just stay open. Let it pass. Just as clouds do not damage the sky, emotions cannot damage consciousness. The sky does not cling to the sunlight or resist the storm. It holds both. Your consciousness can learn to do the same. This does not mean separating yourself from emotions. It means feeling them fully without being consumed by them. When sadness arises, let it arise. Notice where it settles in your body. Feel it fully, but do not claim it as your own. Do not say, "This is me." Say, "Sadness is here." And even when you feel it deeply, there is still a part of you that observes, calm, open, unmoved. That part is the sky. And the more you learn to rest there, the less afraid you are of whatever weather comes your way. In meditation, this is practiced through labeling. You notice a sensation, a thought, or an emotion, and label it quietly. Thinking, feeling, worrying, grieving. Naming is not for judgment, but for observation. And through this observation, identification shifts to observation. It's a subtle change, but it changes everything. Because now you are no longer the storm. You are the sky that allows it. One of the most common obstacles to emotional healing is the belief that strong feelings mean that something is wrong, that anger means failure, that sadness means brokenness, that fear means weakness. But in Buddhist psychology, emotions are not problems. They are messages, weather passing by. Each one carries something with it: energy, memory, unmet needs, truth. And when you let them pass without clinging to them or resisting them, they complete their cycle. They leave behind insight instead of damage. In Buddhism, there is a teaching called Vedana, feeling tone. This is the immediate sensation of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that arises with every experience. And it is what leads to desire or aversion. When something is unpleasant, the mind clings to relief. When something is pleasant, the mind clings to more of it. But when you observe the feeling tone without holding on to it or pushing it away, it passes. You feel the discomfort. You observe the urge to react, and you stay. And in that staying, the emotion transforms. That is why non-identification is not suppression. It is the opposite. It means allowing the emotion to be there without building an identity around it. It means recognizing that every emotion is temporary. No feeling lasts forever. And when the mind stops feeding it with stories, the emotion begins to dissolve. Like rain that falls, softens the ground, and disappears. This exercise is especially important at night, because in the silence, old emotions often rise to the surface. Regret, loneliness, fear. They float in like fog, subtle but heavy. And the mind wants to give them meaning. It wants to say, this feeling is proof of something terrible. But it's not. It's just weather. Let it come. Let it go. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to fight it. Just observe it. And when the emotion becomes too strong, return to your breath. Anchor yourself in your body. Feel the ceiling. Feel the weight of the moment. Let the storm pass through you without letting it overwhelm you. That decision, moment by moment, is the practice. And every time you make it, the mind gets stronger, the heart gets wiser, the nervous system learns to stay calm even in uncomfortable situations. It also changes how you interact with others. When you stop identifying with your own emotions, you stop reacting to the emotions of others. You see their anger, sadness, and fear not as attacks, but as their weather. You don't take it personally. You don't have to fix it. You just hold space, and in that space, real connection can happen. Not identifying means not being emotionally distant. It is emotional wisdom. It means that you feel deeply, but you don't break down. You experience waves of sadness, joy, frustration, tenderness, but you remain the ocean, deep, wide, aware. And the more you rest in that awareness, the less you fear the emotions that arise within you. This practice also protects your peace, because as soon as you stop letting emotions define you, you stop chasing the good ones and fearing the bad ones. You don't live for the highs. You don't break down in the lows. You remain stable, clear. You stop riding the waves and start watching the tides. And this consistency becomes a gift, not just for you, but for everyone around you. You become calm in the room, a stabilizing force in the storm, not because you are untouched, but because you have stopped believing that every emotion must become a crisis. The sky has room for everything. You too. Let the joy come. Let the sadness pass. Let the fear fly away. Let the warmth spread. Everything has its place. None of it defines you. You are not the weather. You are the sky. And once you learn to view emotions as temporary weather, once you stop merging your identity with every thought or feeling that arises, the next level begins to reveal itself. It's not just the emotion that causes exhaustion. It's thinking about the emotion. Overthinking. The constant inner noise trying to understand something that doesn't need to be solved. And right here, when the mind won't stop spinning stories, a simple exercise can provide powerful relief. A visualization so gentle yet so effective that it feels like offering your thoughts a place and watching them calm down just because you see them. Here, we explore the empty chair. There's a reason why overthinking doesn't feel like thinking. It feels like drowning. Thoughts don't come one at a time. They pile up. They swirl around. They go round and round in circles. One worry leads to another, then to a memory, then to a possibility, and suddenly you find yourself in a storm made up entirely of your own mind. And the strangest thing about it is that none of it feels optional. It feels automatic, like you're being thought instead of thinking. Buddhism teaches that liberation from this cycle does not come from stopping thoughts, but from taking a step back, by observing it without becoming part of it. And one of the simplest tools for doing this is visualization. Not just visualizing something peaceful, but the thoughts themselves, giving them form, and above all, distance. The empty chair technique starts with an image, a single chair facing you in your mind. Nothing on it, just open, just waiting. And you begin to place your thoughts on that chair. Not all at once, not like a flood, but one by one. Every worry, every repetitive loop, every fearful prediction, one by one, let them come into the room and take a seat. Don't reject them, don't give in to them, just acknowledge them and give them a place to sit that isn't your chest, your shoulders, or your head. This exercise is not about distancing yourself in the sense of being cold. It is about gently separating your awareness from your identification. The thought still exists, but you are no longer in it. You are facing it. You are observing it. And when the thought is sitting on the chair, something changes. It becomes visible. Its voice becomes clearer, and often it becomes smaller. Most overthinking is driven by fusion, by the belief that the thought is you, that if you think it, it must be true, important, and urgent. But when the thought is placed on the chair, it becomes what it always was, just a visitor, not a command, not a prophecy, not a fact, just a guest. And the longer you watch it, the more it reveals itself. Maybe it's fear masquerading as logic. Maybe it's an old belief resurfacing as worry. Maybe it's just noise that has nowhere to go. You don't have to question the thought. You don't have to fix it. You just watch it. And when it gets up and leaves, you let it go. When another one comes in, you let it sit. You remain the witness. Stay calm. Be friendly. Remain unmoved. This act of visual localization trains the mind to deal with its contents differently. You are no longer trapped in the narrative, but now the host, no longer the participant. This exercise also directly addresses the nervous system. When rumination begins, the body often tenses up. The shoulders rise, breathing becomes shallower, the muscles cramp up. But when you imagine placing the thought outside of yourself, the body responds. It relaxes. Breathing becomes deeper. This is because the body believes that the danger has been averted, even if only symbolically. And in many ways, it is. You acknowledge the activity of the mind without following every signal it sends. One of the most helpful ways to deepen this exercise is to give the thought a form, a color, a posture, make it visible. What does your fear look like? How does your self-doubt sit on the chair? Is it slumped, rigid, pacing back and forth? This isn't just fantasy, it's intimacy. You get to know the habits of your own mind by giving them space to become visible. Over time, the chair becomes a ritual, a place in your inner world where thoughts can come and go without disturbing your peace. And when a particularly loud or painful thought arises, don't fight it. You welcome it to the chair. You again, Okay, sit down. I'll watch you. That's all. This non-reactivity disarms the thought. It no longer has any power. It is simply being observed. The profound thing about this is that this exercise does not silence the mind. It changes your relationship with it. You stop wrestling with your thoughts. You stop believing that they need to be resolved. And as a result, they begin to slow down. Because what drives them most is resistance. The more you try to suppress them, the louder they return. But observation calms them down because they are acknowledged. This visualization also teaches emotional maturity. When you can sit with your own thoughts without merging with them, you gain perspective. You realize that most anxious thoughts are not new. They are echoes, old fears in new guises, old patterns repeating familiar lines. And from this distance, you stop reacting out of habit. You react out of clarity. This exercise is especially helpful at night, because ruminating not only delays sleep, it also robs you of the space that is meant for rest. The mind begins to make lists, overthink things, regret things, and make predictions. And without a technique to ground you, the hours pass in tension. But when you return to the chair, something softens. You give the thought its place and return to your breath. You give the next thought its place and return again. The body recognizes that there is nothing urgent to do, and sleep becomes possible again. There is also something beautiful about observing how some thoughts try to resist the chair. They don't want to be observed. They want to merge with your voice. But when you notice this trick, smile gently and say, "No, I see you. Stay there." And in that moment, you are no longer the thought. You are the one who sees it. This seeing is liberation. This exercise also helps develop compassion, because the more you observe your thoughts without judgment, the more you transfer that compassion to others. You realize that everyone walks around with chairs full of visitors, some loud, some fearful, some deeply tired. And instead of reacting to people's behavior, you begin to see the thoughts behind it, the burdens they carry, the loops they are caught in, and your heart softens. In Buddhist teachings, this visualization is linked to the deeper principle of mindfulness with detachment. You can see without possessing. You can care without clinging. You can feel without being consumed. And this balance creates space for calm, for reflection, for wisdom to emerge. The empty chair is not just a trick, it is an exercise, a way of telling the mind, "I hear you, but I am not defined by you. I see you, but I don't have to obey you." And the more you practice this, the stronger this muscle becomes. Eventually, the visualization also appears outside of meditation, in a conversation, in a moment of panic, in a flood of doubts, and you put the thought on the chair without even closing your eyes. You feel the space returning, you feel your breath deepening, and your presence regains the moment. You don't have to empty your mind, just give its contents a place. You don't have to escape your thoughts, just stop chasing after them. Give them their chair, and allow yourself a break. And after you've watched your thoughts take their place, after you've freed yourself from the loops that once held you captive, there is finally space to feel what has been waiting beneath all along. The silence that doesn't feel empty, the breath that doesn't feel forced, the peace that needs no reason. In this silence, something begins to emerge, quiet, gentle, yet deeply powerful. It's not loud like excitement. It's not dazzling like pleasure. It's subtle, and it changes everything. Here we turn to the Dharma of joy, the art of discovering sacred joy in the smallest, simplest things. Most people wait for joy as if it were an event, as if it needed a special occasion, a certain level of success, or permission from someone else. But Buddhism turns this idea on its head. It teaches that joy is not rare, it is not hidden, it is simply overlooked, covered up by speed, overlooked in the hustle and bustle, forgotten behind the belief that only big things are worth celebrating. But the truth is that life consists mostly of small things. And if joy is only allowed to exist in the spectacular, most of life is labeled as ordinary, as unworthy, as background noise. This is where mindfulness opens the door. Because mindfulness not only creates awareness, it also amplifies beauty. It shows you what has always been there. The Dharma of joy is a way of seeing, not changing what you do, but how you see what you do. It's going into the kitchen and feeling the warmth of the floor beneath your feet. It's brushing your teeth and really tasting the mint. It's taking a sip of water and feeling it quench your thirst. These things sound small, but small is the door. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are real. And the more the mind learns to rest in them, the more it learns that joy does not have to be earned, it just has to be noticed. The Buddha taught that joy, piti, and happiness, sukha, are natural results of a calm mind. They are not goals, they are signs. When the mind is not agitated, not striving for something, not pushing, these qualities begin to appear, not in a fireworks display, but in the radiance of everyday life. It is this radiance that you learn to see through this practice. This does not mean pretending that everything is fine or forcing yourself to smile despite feeling uncomfortable. It means training the eyes of mindfulness to capture the moments that the untrained mind overlooks. It means learning to pause for 5 seconds and really feel the wind on your skin, the rhythm of your own footsteps, the texture of the sunlight on your hands. These details are not trivial. They are the stuff that life is made of, and each one of them, when encountered with mindfulness, becomes a seed of joy. Most people have habits based on performance. Finishing something, buying something, earning something, then you might feel good. But these habits are based on delay. They teach the nervous system that joy is a reward, something that comes afterwards. But the Dharma of joy removes this delay. It says, joy is available now, in this breath, in this second, right where you are standing. This kind of joy has nothing to do with excitement. It is not based on dopamine. It is not about stimulation. It is about resonance, about a subtle alignment between the heart and the moment, where the mind is neither leaning forward nor falling back. It is simply here. And in this here, something warm opens up. This warmth is joy. And it doesn't come from what is happening, but from how fully you encounter it. When mindfulness rests on a small moment, that moment expands. A bite of food becomes a whole experience. The song of a bird becomes a song. The smile of a stranger becomes a gentle echo that reverberates in your chest. None of this has to last. That's not the point. The point is that these things are noticed, felt, appreciated, and when that happens, they leave a subtle trace of joy. In Buddhist teachings, this joy is not only pleasant, but spiritual. It prepares the mind for insight. A joyful mind is more open, more flexible. It can see more clearly. Joy softens the inner world so that the truth can be heard without resistance. That is why this practice is not indulgence. It is essential. You are not chasing pleasure. You are discovering the joy that already exists in the world you walk through every day. But that takes practice, because the mind is used to skipping ahead. It wants to move on to the next thing, and even when everything is good, it wonders how long it will last. This habit of scanning, judging, predicting, that is what blocks joy. So the practice is to interrupt the scanning, to gently say, this moment is enough, and stick with it, even for a breath, even for 3 seconds. In this lingering, joy comes in. In Buddhism, there is also a teaching that joy is contagious, not just socially, but also internally. When you experience a joyful moment, the next one is easier to see. And the next one, until the mind finally starts looking for the good instead of what is missing. Not out of denial, but out of balance. Because joy is not about ignoring pain. It's about remembering that pain is not everything. You can practice this with everything. Washing your hands, making your bed, opening a window. Every action becomes a ritual, a small offering to mindfulness. And when you fully embrace it, something always reveals itself. A sound, a smell, a temperature, a sensation. Something that was always there, but hidden behind distractions. And when you notice it, your nervous system changes, your shoulders drop, your breathing calms down, and your heart smiles for no reason. The Dharma of joy is not limited to quiet moments. It can show itself in chaos, in laughter during difficult times, in a deep breath amid noise, in a moment of connection when everything else falls apart. This joy is not fragile. It is resilient. It does not wait for everything to be perfect. It arises from imperfection. In the evening, this exercise becomes a gentle guide to calm. Instead of going over the worries of the day, the mind is invited to remember small joys. A warm shower, a kind word, a funny moment, a peaceful break. You let your body feel them again, not to escape the difficult parts, but to give the good parts the same space. This balance teaches the brain to rest in gratitude instead of looking for danger. And the sleep that follows is deeper. Not because the world has changed, but because your attention has changed. This also changes your relationship with time. When joy lives only in goals, time becomes a race. But when it lives in the present, time slows down. A walk takes longer, but feels better. A conversation drags on, but has more meaning. Even silence becomes something you can be with, something you don't have to run away from. This change gives you energy back, because you no longer lose it through constant striving. There is no single way to achieve this. The practice is individual. For some, it is watching the light fall on the wall. For others, it is the rhythm of their steps, or the feel of their clothes on their skin, or the comfort of a daily ritual. The content does not matter. Awareness is what matters. Because it is not the moment that creates joy, it is your presence in that moment. And this presence requires no special skills. Only willingness, the willingness to pause, to relax, to feel, even if it seems pointless, even if the moment seems insignificant, because that is the secret. Nothing is too small. Everything is made up of small things. And once you learn to find joy in the overlooked things, you realize that joy was never missing. It was just waiting to be seen. The Dharma of joy is a path that imposes nothing new on you. It only requires that you be attentive, that you look, that you slow down enough for the world to have time to show you what it has always offered you. And when you see that, you begin to feel it. Not hecticness, not intoxication, but a warmth that builds up. Quietly, confidently, a joy that doesn't need to impress, a joy that lives right here. And as soon as your eyes begin to notice the little joys, as soon as the rhythm of everyday life begins to shine, you begin to understand that joy does not always have to be found. Sometimes it can be given. Sometimes it can be offered, not as a performance, not to be seen, but as a quiet expression of something deep inside. Here, the path of joy transforms into something even more radiant, a joy that arises without reason, a smile that does not wait for permission, a radiance that needs no reason. This is the smile without reason, inspired by the spirit of the Bodhisattva, and it has the power to uplift everything it touches. In Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva is not a superhero. They are not perfect or untouchable. They are beings who choose to remain in this world out of deep love, not out of duty or suffering. Their goal is not only personal liberation, but the alleviation of the suffering of others. They walk through life with an inner light that does not fade even when it gets dark. And one of their strongest qualities is joy. A joy that does not depend on results, is not delayed by circumstances, and does not depend on how they are treated. A joy that flows because it must, because it overflows. This kind of joy changes everything because it cannot be stolen. If your happiness depends on what others say, what you achieve, or what goes according to plan, then your peace is always in danger. But when joy arises without reason, when it lives like a silent sun at the center of your being, then even storms cannot shake it. This is not theory. This is lived energy, and it begins with a change in the way you see your own presence in the world. In the Bodhisattva teachings, the mind is not a container for personal gain. It is an energy transmitter. Your thoughts, your mood, your presence, all of these influence the space around you. Whether you speak or not, whether someone sees you or not. And when you begin to understand this, you realize that your peace is not private. It radiates out. So the joy you cultivate, even if it is silent, even if it is just a gentle smile in the darkness, becomes a gift. Not to prove anything, not to get anything, but because there is something in you that is too generous to keep to yourself. A smile without a reason is not a fake smile. It is not plastered over pain. It is a deep expression of freedom. Freedom from the need for everything to be perfect in order to feel good. It does not ignore sadness. It includes it. It makes room for everything and still chooses to build up. This is the joy of a bodhisattva, and everyone can experience it, not through effort, but through presence, not through control, but through openness. One of the most surprising things about this kind of joy is how easy it feels. It's not intense, it's not dramatic, it's gentle. It's the kind of happiness that rests in the eyes, that resonates beneath the words, that moves like warmth through the silence. And the more you practice mindfulness, the more often it appears, unannounced, undeserved, but unmistakable. This is not something the world often teaches us. Most people are told that their joy must have a reason, that it must be associated with success, pleasure, praise, or romance. But Buddhism says something different. The smile of the bodhisattvas does not come from what they receive, but from what they give. And what they give is energy, not just actions, but presence. They elevate the space simply by being there. To practice this, you don't have to be visible. You don't have to speak. You don't need an audience. You can start alone, in a room, in your bed, walking down a hallway, doing the dishes. You simply start with your breath. You feel your feet. You relax your face, and you let a smile emerge, not to impress, but to center yourself. You remind yourself that this moment is alive, that consciousness is there, that even now, even without a special reason, peace is possible. At first, your mind may resist. It may ask, "Why smile now? What's the point?" That's conditioning talking, the belief that you have to earn joy. But the more you allow yourself to feel joy without justifying it, the more your nervous system learns that it doesn't need a story to feel light. And slowly, that smile begins to appear on its own. When walking, when folding laundry, while doing nothing at all, it becomes a habit, not a pretense, but a reminder. Because deep down, this smile is a reminder that beneath all the stress and noise, you are already whole, already kind, already full of light. The bodhisattva does not wait to feel good in order to serve. He serves, and joy follows. And even in solitude, his presence radiates outward. This is not spiritual fantasy. It is also neurobiology. When your heart softens, your breath deepens, your face opens, your entire system enters a state of regeneration. And this regeneration is not selfish. It is contagious. The people around you feel it, even if you don't say a word. They feel the calm, the consistency, the subtle invitation to feel safe. And in a world where most people are overwhelmed, that invitation is a rare and precious gift. The smile without a reason becomes a refuge, for you and for others. Practicing this does not mean denying your pain. It means not letting pain be the only voice in the room. It means creating space where joy and sadness can coexist, so that the light can return, even if only in small sparks. You don't have to pretend that everything is fine. You just have to remember that joy is also part of you. This shows up in simple ways in everyday life. You enter a room with presence instead of haste. You greet people with calm instead of putting on a show. You meet difficulties with curiosity instead of panic. And even when things feel heavy, you carry yourself lightly, not to minimize the weight, but to move with it instead of against it. In the evening, the baseless smile becomes a gentle gateway to sleep. When the day comes to an end and nothing particularly noteworthy has happened, you can still choose to rest in warmth. You feel your face soften. You feel your breath slow down. You can't remember anything special, and yet you are grateful. That is the secret. Joy is not the result of something that happens. It is the result of not needing anything else for it to arise. In the Bodhisattva tradition, There is an exercise in which you imagine how others receive your light. Even when you feel tired, even when you feel empty, you offer your presence like a silent candle in a huge room. And this offering does not drain you, it fills you up again, because joy multiplies when it is given. Not big, not loud, just steady, just honest. And the more it is shared, the stronger it becomes. This kind of joy is one of the greatest acts of resistance in a world that thrives on urgency and scarcity. When you smile for no reason, you are saying, "This moment is already perfect. I don't have to wait for the next thing to feel whole. I don't have to be more to be enough. I can be kind right now. I can be light right now." And in that decision lies a deeper power. You may not change the world with a single smile, but you change the moment, and the moment changes you. So the next time nothing special happens, smile anyway. Let your body remember what your mind has forgotten. That joy needs no justification, that your peace needs no permission. You are not waiting for the perfect moment. You are the perfect moment, calm, grounded, and full of light. And the smile you give away, even when it is silent, reaches further than you can ever imagine. And when joy no longer waits for a reason, when it begins to shine without asking for anything in return, a strange silence follows, not empty, not cold, but fulfilled. A silence that demands nothing, a silence that does not occur. It is not a gap that needs to be filled. It is a refuge where you can rest. After the groundless smile has opened the heart, a deeper invitation comes. Let the words fall away. Let the noise fall silent. Let the silence become your teacher. This is where Buddhist silence takes over, not as an absence of thoughts, but as a space that preserves peace when thoughts no longer lead the way. We spend most of our day with words. Outer words, inner words, stories, lists, comments. Even when no one is speaking, the mind fills the silence. And the strange thing is that this chatter seems normal. It becomes so constant that its absence is unfamiliar. But beneath all the noise, something gentler is always waiting. A silence that needs no language, a clarity that needs no narrative. Buddhist practice not only points to this silence, it lives in it. For silence is not a gap between useful things. It is itself the most useful thing of all. Self-talk is not inherently bad. It helps us find our way. It plans, solves problems, names things. But it is also where the inner critic hides, where insecurity lives, where fears about the future and regrets about the past circle endlessly. And the problem is not the presence of words, it is the lack of space between them. When the inner dialogue becomes a wall of noise, there is no room left for truth. Then silence becomes medicine. Buddhism teaches that silence is not just the absence of speech, it is a presence, a living field of consciousness that doesn't need to say anything to know. And when you enter this field, something profound happens. The body begins to loosen its grip, the breath finds its own rhythm, and the mind, accustomed to being in control, begins to dissolve in the moment. Not because it has been suppressed, but because it has finally found something deeper. This silence doesn't have to last long. Just a few seconds of real silence can change the entire tone of the nervous system. The chatter becomes quieter. The emotional charge dissipates. Not because you've figured something out, but because the need to explain it has disappeared. Silence is not an answer. It is what remains when the question falls away. The power of this silence lies in its ability to interrupt habitual thoughts. Thoughts are not the problem. The loops are. The echo chambers. The comments that say the same thing in different words in the hope of feeling something new. Buddhist meditation interrupts this without coercion. It simply invites you to sit down, to breathe, to return. And each return is a silent refusal to fuel the noise any further. There is a reason why monasteries value silence so highly, not just in formal practice, but in their entire way of life. Because in that silence, something forgotten returns. A consciousness that cannot be conveyed through language, a clarity that does not arise from analysis, and a peace that does not depend on doing everything right. When the silence lasts long enough, the mind grows tired of talking, and when it stops, everything softens. Silence does not erase thoughts. It surrounds them. It creates space in which they can move without colliding with each other. In this space, thoughts become clearer, wiser, less charged, because silence holds them like a parent holds a child, not to control them, but to stabilize them. And over time, this holding changes the nervous system. Thoughts that used to scream now whisper. Thoughts that used to race come to rest. And the identity that was built around them begins to crumble. This transformation is not dramatic. It is subtle. You can feel it in the way your breath moves differently, in the way tensions release without you telling them to, in the way you stop having to explain yourself to yourself. Because silence requires no explanation. It is simply there. And in this being, you remember what it is like to be without having to pretend to be anything. Practicing silence means perceiving the spaces between thoughts, perceiving the end of the exhalation, the pause before the next sentence. These are not gaps that you have to hurry through. They are doors, and when you linger at these thresholds, something opens up. A kind of silent presence that does not belong to the thinking mind. It is not a thought. It is not even a feeling. It is the awareness that allows both. That is why Buddhist retreats often emphasize noble silence, not as a punishment, but as a sacred invitation. Because the less you speak, the more you hear, not with your ears, but with your body, with your intuition, with your knowledge. And this knowledge does not speak in paragraphs. It comes in silence. This silence can also be practiced at home. Start with a few minutes in the morning. No music, no words, no goals, just presence, just breath. At first, your mind may resist. It may panic. But if you stay, if you listen, the noise loses its power. It turns out to be a habit, not a necessity. And in its place, silence emerges as a friend. Silence also changes the way you interact with others. When you are not constantly expressing your thoughts, you listen differently. You hear the emotions behind the words of the person you are talking to. You notice pauses. You speak less. But when you do speak, it comes across clearly and distinctly, because it does not fill the room. It comes from silence. And people sense that. At night, this silence becomes a path to deep rest. Instead of filling the silence with more thoughts, reflections, and self-talk, you simply let it be. You let yourself be rocked by the silence. You let your breath flow without controlling it. And sleep does not come as an escape, but as a deep continuation of peace. Because the mind has been trained, even if only for a few minutes, to trust silence more than sound. In Zen Buddhism, there is an exercise called shikantaza, simply sitting, no mantras, no object of focus, just sitting, just being. And in this pure being, silence is not empty, it is full, it contains the whole world. For in the absence of effort, the presence of everything else becomes visible, the light, the body, the breath, the now. All of this is held in the silence that you once thought was nothing. You don't have to give up language to access it. You just have to pay attention to how often you try to escape the silence, and then gently stop running. Turn toward it. Feel the silence. Let it wash over you, not to achieve anything, just to remember that beneath every word, every thought, every idea, there is this space, always there, always waiting, always full. And when the chatter returns, as it will, you don't fight it, you notice it, you let it pass, and you return, again and again, until silence becomes your home, not your enemy, until the mind is no longer afraid of silence, until peace becomes louder than thoughts. This is what silence teaches us, not how to escape the mind, but how to keep it so calm that it no longer needs to scream. And in this calmness, your deepest self is revealed, not through thinking, but through being. You are not here to persuade your thoughts. You are here to silence them. And when the silence begins to speak louder than the thoughts, when the mind no longer needs to fill every space with noise, a clarity remains that cannot be described in words. This clarity does not bring more control, it does the opposite. It reveals the truth that the mind tries to escape, that some things will never bow to your will, that some outcomes will never be predictable, that some situations cannot be repaired, explained, or undone. And in this awareness, a deeper practice begins, not resistance, not surrender out of weakness, but surrender out of wisdom, the kind of surrender that frees the heart without guilt, the kind of surrender that gently lays you down in the truth of what is. This is conscious surrender. Most of what exhausts the modern mind is not inaction, but excessive control. It is the need to control not only tasks, but also emotions, relationships, opinions, and every possible future. It is the attempt to carry situations that do not belong to you. It is the self-reproach for not having fixed something that could never be fixed. This is where the tension lies, not in the moment, but in the illusion of responsibility. The burden of believing that everything would be better if only we tried harder, thought longer, and sacrificed more. Buddhism, however, offers a different way forward. It teaches that surrender is not synonymous with defeat. In fact, conscious surrender is a form of strength. Not the strength to win, but the strength to let go. Not giving up, but letting go of what never belonged to you. This is not passivity, it is clarity. Because when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you create emotional, mental, and physical space to focus on what you can actually influence, your own state of mind. It starts with a question: What are you still carrying around with you that doesn't serve you? Not in theory, but in this moment. Is it regret from days long past? A conflict you keep replaying in your mind? A fear of other people's decisions? The pressure to prove yourself, to protect everyone, to do everything right? The moment you name it, you begin to let go. Because most suffering does not arise from the event itself, but from the constant attempt to control something that has already happened or has not yet happened. Buddhist devotion does not mean giving up. It means bowing to the truth. It means acknowledging that impermanence is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. Everything changes. Everything is in motion. And control is often the mind's attempt to deny this. But what if control is not security? What if true security comes from trust, not in a perfect outcome, but in your ability to meet whatever comes with presence? This kind of surrender doesn't erase the pain. It simply ends the additional pain that comes from trying to control something you can't touch. And when that effort stops, there is a deep exhalation that flows through the entire body. A quiet calm that says, I don't have to hold on to this anymore. This letting go is not giving up. It is wisdom. The wisdom that knows that your peace is more valuable than your illusion of control. In Buddhism, there is a teaching called upekkha, equanimity, the ability to remain balanced in all things. And conscious surrender is part of that. It is the willingness to let go of the struggle with life, not just turning away, but ceasing to argue with the reality that this moment is exactly what it is. That doesn't mean liking everything. It means accepting it as it is, without denial, without panic, without guilt, because you can't change the unchangeable. One of the silent poisons that block surrender is guilt. The belief that if something has gone wrong, it must be your fault. That if someone else has problems, you have failed them. That if life doesn't go according to plan, you are somehow to blame. But guilt, when allowed to grow unchecked, becomes a leash that binds you to control. Because if you are to blame, it becomes a moral obligation to fix the problem. But not everything is your responsibility. Buddhism promotes clear seeing. Look deeply into your role, your actions, your intentions, and then let go of what is beyond your reach. That doesn't mean being careless. It means being honest. There is a difference between responsibility and over-responsibility. The first is grounded. The second is steeped in fear. Conscious letting go is what separates the two. It allows you to respond with care without feeling shame for what is beyond your control. In meditation, this surrender begins as an exercise in letting go. You notice tension in your body, in your shoulders, your jaw, your stomach, and you allow it to soften. Not all at once, not perfectly, just one breath at a time. You feel where your mind is holding on, grasping, turning, and you gently say, "Let it be," again and again. You don't force silence. You don't demand calm. You offer space. And in that space, the holding on stops. At night, this surrender becomes essential because it is often in the quiet moments that old patterns of control resurface. The mind replays what didn't go well. It prepares for what could go wrong. And if you don't intervene with mindfulness, this spiral deepens. But letting go interrupts it. You return to your body. You feel the bed beneath you. You relax the muscles that believe they have to hold on to the whole world. You whisper to yourself, "That can wait. That's not part of me right now." And even if nothing changes externally, the body hears the signal, and it rests. Letting go also affects relationships, because much of what people suffer is not only their own pain, but also the pain of others. We want our loved ones to heal. We want people to change. We want to protect everyone from their own lessons, but conscious surrender says, "I will love with all my heart, but I will not try to control another person's path. I can offer wisdom, I can set boundaries, but I cannot walk their path." And in this letting go, something sacred happens. Love becomes purer, less confused, more peaceful. Letting go is important even in one's own inner development. The mind wants to speed up healing, fix something quickly, become enlightened quickly. But that too is a form of control. Buddhism teaches patience, not because change is slow, but because it cannot be forced. You sow the seeds, you nurture the soil. But the unfolding belongs to time, not to the will, and letting go is what allows this growth to happen naturally, without guilt, without shame, without haste. One of the most beautiful things about this practice is that it brings relief. Not dramatic relief, but real relief. When you let go of false responsibility, energy returns, space returns. Your breath feels deeper because it is not constricted. Your body feels lighter because it is not tense. And your mind begins to trust the present moment again, not because it is perfect, but because it is no longer controlled. You begin to realize that the deepest peace does not come from mastering life, but from encountering it, fully, gently, honestly. And when things don't go the way you want them to, you don't break down. You bow, not out of weakness, but out of reverence, because you now understand that letting go does not mean losing. It means returning to what you can hold on to and letting go of what holds you back. Conscious letting go is not something you achieve once. It is a decision you make moment by moment. Loosen your grip. Trust your breath. Believe that you don't have to control everything to be okay. And every time you practice it, your nervous system remembers. Your body remembers. And slowly, the inner struggle with life ends. So, if there is something that still feels heavy tonight, ask yourself, is this really my burden? And if not, can I let it go? Not because it's been resolved, not because it's gone, but because holding on to it any longer doesn't help. And if it is your burden, can you carry it without guilt, without panic, and without clinging to the outcome? Can you stay with it gently as you would with your breath, held lightly, not clutched tightly? That is surrender, not escape, but a sacred return. Not silence in defeat, but peace in knowing what is real. You are allowed to rest now, even if the world keeps turning, even if things are still unclear. You are allowed to soften, trust, let go. And in this letting go, a deeper power emerges, a power that does not control life, but goes with it. Breath by breath, moment by moment, with calm, with wisdom, and with peace. And as soon as the burden of excessive responsibility is let go, as soon as the quiet act of surrender creates space in your chest, the mind becomes more fertile, not crowded, not chaotic, but open, as it has not been for a long time. This openness is not empty. It is ready, ready to receive, ready to be shaped. For every moment of inner peace is also a breeding ground, especially in the moments just before falling asleep, when thoughts come to rest and the subconscious is more receptive than at any other time of day. Here we begin to understand karma not only as action, but as attention. Not only as external deeds, but as inner seeds. The karma of thoughts before falling asleep may be subtle, but it holds immense power. Karma is often misunderstood as cosmic punishment or reward, like a kind of mystical scoreboard. But in Buddhist teaching, karma is not about judgment. It is about cause and effect. Every action, every word, every thought sows a seed. This seed does not germinate immediately, but it shapes the field of the mind. And the field never forgets. It doesn't have to. It stores everything quietly and silently. Then, without warning, it grows. Not always where you expect it, and not always as you expect it, but always true to the energy that was sown. The most overlooked aspect of karma is what happens internally. People focus on what they do, what they say, how they treat others, and all of that is very important. But what is often overlooked is how you treat yourself in the invisible moments. The conversations you have with your own mind, the stories you tell yourself, the beliefs you repeat. These are the seeds that shape your emotional weather. And bedtime is one of the most fertile times to sow those seeds. The moments before falling asleep are not wasted minutes. They are gentle, sacred transitions. Your consciousness begins to relax. Your body lets down its defenses. The subconscious opens its doors. And everything you put into this space is carried through the night. That's why a single harsh thought before falling asleep can echo in your dreams. And that's why a kind, stable thought can become a source of healing that lasts into the morning. Buddhist practice invites you to use this space consciously. Don't think of your last thoughts as leftovers, but as offerings. What you give your mind in these last minutes sets the tone for the night, and that tone becomes the tone of the next day. If the mind is offered fear, anxiety, guilt, or resentment, it will carry these vibrations into the resting body. If the mind is offered peace, gratitude, loving kindness, or self-acceptance, these too will take root and even begin to grow while you sleep. Sowing is not about forcing positivity. It is about conscious choices. Decide which thoughts deserve your last attention. Decide which beliefs deserve to be watered. And decide which patterns no longer need your energy. It's not a show, it's care. The same care you would give to a garden. You don't curse the soil, you just carefully pull the weeds, and you plant what nourishes. To begin this practice, start small. Pause before you go to sleep. Even if it's just for a minute, take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what seed do I want to plant right now? Not a goal or a desire, but a quality. Maybe lightness, maybe security, maybe compassion. Choose one, and let your mind rest there. Not by repeating it like a mantra, but by feeling it. Let your body relax around it. Let it spread throughout your consciousness. Let it be the last thing you give to the night. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic. It can be as simple as remembering something that felt good during the day. A moment when you felt respected, calm, or seen. A moment when you felt connected. Let that memory work its magic in your body. Not to cling to it, but to let it nourish you. The mind often replays painful memories out of habit, but you can train it to play back joyful memories as medicine instead. Another seed you can sow is gratitude, not as an obligation, but as an opening. Not a list, but a feeling. One thing that felt good today, one thing that didn't go wrong, one thing that reminded you that peace is possible. You don't have to be grateful for everything, but you can be grateful for something. And that one thread of gratitude, when felt sincerely, sends a signal through your entire nervous system. It tells the body, we are safe, we can rest. This signal allows for deeper sleep, fewer nightmares, a calmer awakening. The way you talk to yourself before going to sleep also has a profound karmic effect. The last sound of your inner voice is important. If it is harsh, your body will tense up during the night. If it is kind, your body will relax. So instead of repeating mistakes or panicking about the next day, you can choose to engage in a gentler dialogue. Something as simple as, I did my best, or I'm letting that go now, or whatever tomorrow brings, I will meet it with presence. These sentences are not affirmations. They are seeds. They don't have to convince you. They just need to be sown. And sometimes the strongest seed is silence. No words, just breath, just being. Not striving is a powerful impression in itself. Leaving the last few minutes before falling asleep free of effort, free of the need to be something or solve something, is one of the most healing things you can offer your system. It tells your deeper mind, nothing is missing, nothing needs to be added. This moment is complete. And this message remains in your memory long after you fall asleep. Over time, this practice changes your relationship with sleep itself. Sleep is no longer an escape, but becomes a refuge. It becomes a time of integration, not avoidance. And in the morning, you feel the effects, not just in your mood, but also in your resilience, in your clarity, in how quickly you return to calm after stress. Because the seeds you sow don't just stay in the night. They shape your next thoughts, your next reactions, your next decisions. This is the silent power of inner karma. It is not loud, it is not public, but it is transformative. The thoughts you repeat in private shape the emotions you show in public. The stories you tell yourself at night become your attitude during the day, and the beliefs you practice before going to sleep become the emotional climate in which you wake up. That's why this practice for deep peace is not optional. It is essential, not as a burden, but as a gift. The mind always grows something, and if you don't decide for yourself what you want to sow, the weeds will decide for you. But when you decide, when you choose to treat yourself with mindfulness, everything changes, slowly, quietly, and completely. And none of this requires perfection. Some nights will be chaotic, some thoughts will be persistent, some seeds will take longer to germinate. That's okay. The mind is a field that has been shaped by years of patterns. It doesn't change overnight, but it does change. And every time you pause before bed and give yourself something good, something beautiful, something peaceful, you change the entire field. As your body prepares for rest tonight, gently ask yourself, what am I planting right now? And if the answer is difficult, plant something lighter. Not because the heavy stuff isn't important, but because it's not the only thing that's true. Let something else take root alongside it. Let hope grow alongside fear. Let peace grow alongside uncertainty. Let love grow alongside the pain of not knowing. Because in the field of the mind, there is always space, always time, always another chance to plant something better. And sleep, when treated with care, becomes more than just rest. It becomes renewal. And once you start planting the quiet seeds of thought at night, once you understand that your inner field responds more to intention than to effort, a new kind of trust emerges. Not the kind based on control, not the kind fed by having all the answers, but a slower trust, a deeper trust, the kind that says, maybe I don't have to solve everything before I go to sleep. Maybe my awareness is enough. Maybe healing doesn't come from fixing, but from floating, from letting the mind rest on the surface instead of diving urgently into the depths. At this point, the practice shifts again towards the art of letting go of problem-solving and resting in pure awareness. The mind wants to fix things. It's wired that way. It believes that security comes from solutions, from wrapping everything up in neat conclusions and pushing discomfort away. During the day, this tendency can be helpful. It can create progress, structure, and understanding. But at night, the same habit becomes a trap. When the lights go out and the body comes to rest, the mind doesn't always understand. It believes it must continue, that it has one last task to complete, that if it can just solve this one problem, it will finally find peace. But that's a lie, because there is no last thought, no final solution. The mind will always offer another perspective, another concern, another imaginary scenario. It does not find peace by solving problems. It finds peace by giving up. This giving up begins with a decision to stop looking for a solution and instead trust the consciousness that recognizes the need for a solution. Consciousness is different from thinking. It does not argue. It does not demand. It does not insist that something must be different in order to be okay. Consciousness simply perceives. It perceives the thoughts, the tensions, the impulses to control, and it does not push any of it away. It just sees, and that seeing alone has power. When you rest in perception instead of reacting, something softens. Not that the problems disappear. Rather, your relationship to them changes. They are no longer urgent emergencies. They become temporary weather phenomena. They are not walls. They are clouds. And just like clouds, they don't need your help to move. They drift away on their own when you stop holding on to them. Hovering above, letting go, means allowing thoughts to rise without holding on to them. It means allowing discomfort without making it a mystery. And it means realizing that insight does not come from force. It comes from space, from the pause, from the silence you create when you stop forcing your mind to find a solution. Buddhist meditation teaches this in the simplest way. You sit, you breathe, thoughts come. You don't chase after them, you don't respond to them, you let them float. And what you find again and again is that the more you allow thoughts to be, the more they dissolve. Not because you outsmarted them, but because you didn't feed them. You watched, and they passed. This observation becomes your superpower at night. When your mind says, "What if this doesn't work?" Or, "Why did this happen?" Or, "How can I fix this?" You breathe, you listen, and then you return to the present moment, not to deny the question, but to remind yourself that answers don't arise from tension. They arise from stillness, from openness, from a mind that doesn't strive to control everything. That doesn't mean ignoring responsibility. It means knowing when responsibility becomes obsession. It means drawing a line between what needs to be done and what the mind does out of habit. And bedtime is the perfect time to draw that line, because the work of the night is different. It's not about fixing something, it's about integrating, to heal, to repair from within, and none of that requires control. It requires letting go. One of the gentlest ways to begin this practice is to name the problem and then let it go. You can say to yourself, "This is here, I feel it, I acknowledge it, and now I let go of the need to solve it tonight." That one sentence breaks the cycle. It creates a gentle boundary, not to shut down the mind, but to bring it back to rest. Trusting consciousness does not mean giving up. It means trusting that rest is useful in and of itself. This realization does not always come in the form of clear thoughts. Sometimes it comes in the form of dreams, in the form of a calmer nervous system, in the form of a new perspective in the morning that couldn't be achieved through effort. Letting go allows these things to rise to the surface. Holding on stifles them before they can emerge. And here's something surprising. Most of the answers people seek at night are only needed in the morning. The urgency is a trick of the mind, a way to avoid silence. But when you resist this trick, even if only for a few breaths, you begin to see it clearly. Thoughts are not real-time emergencies. They are echoes, mental habits, and awareness sees them without falling into them. This awareness grows stronger with each practice. Every time you notice a loop and don't follow it. Every time you feel the urge to analyze something and breathe instead. Every time you let a thought pass without holding on to it. These moments are small, but they add up. And the more you float, the less the mind believes it has to fix everything. Floating also heals the body. That's because the nervous system can't distinguish between real danger and imaginary problem solving. When you think with tension, the body responds with adrenaline, with cortisol, with shallow breathing and tense muscles. But when you rest in mindfulness, the body recalibrates. It shifts into the parasympathetic state, rest and digestion. This is where real sleep begins. This is where the body carries out its deepest repair work. At first, floating may feel uncomfortable, as if you are not doing enough, as if you are ignoring something important. But that is just your mind reacting to a new habit. And habits do not change overnight. Stick with it. Let the discomfort be part of floating. Let the need to fix something be something you observe, not something you obey. And slowly, something changes. Thoughts lose their urgency. The body learns to relax without closure, and your breath becomes your anchor. Not because you did everything right, but because you stopped trying. This exercise also teaches humility. It reminds you that you don't have to have all the answers, that some clarity only comes when you're not looking for it. And that's okay. You're not failing because you're not fixing anything. You're healing by resting. And healing is what creates true solutions, not the frantic ones, but the ones that last. As the night deepens, you return again and again to the present moment, to your breath, to your body. You say gently, "I don't need to know right now. I just need to be." And this being becomes your freedom. It becomes your security, because it is not based on control, but on surrender. And in this surrender, the mind finally understands awareness is enough. So let yourself drift tonight. Let the thoughts be there without holding on to them. Let the feelings arise without analyzing them. Let consciousness hold everything without having to change it. Because in the space where nothing is forced, everything can unfold, quietly, naturally, and exactly when it is ready. And when the mind stops searching for answers, when it learns to float instead of holding on, a quiet openness remains. This openness does not demand further thoughts. It waits, it observes, and sometimes what it sees next can be uncomfortable, not external problems, but internal residues, feelings that have not been fully processed, words you have said to yourself that still hurt, judgments that have never been washed away. And in the silence, these stains rise to the surface of your consciousness, not to punish you, not to shame you, but to be seen clearly, to be gently wiped away with something stronger than self-criticism, with something softer, something honest. Here, self-compassion becomes a mirror-cleaning cloth for the mind. The mind is like a mirror. It reflects what is. It stores memories, impressions, reactions, and over time it becomes clouded by these impressions. Like fingerprints on glass, every harsh thought, every suppressed feeling, every unkind judgment leaves traces. And when there are too many, it becomes more difficult to see clearly. You not only perceive the world incorrectly, but also yourself. You begin to believe that the stains are part of the glass, that the distortion is the truth. But it is not. The truth is always there, beneath the traces. And what removes it is not perfection or punishment. It is compassion. Self-compassion is often misunderstood as leniency, as letting yourself off the hook. But in Buddhism, it is seen as an essential part of inner clarity. Without it, there is no honest seeing, because when the mind is hard, it avoids the truth out of fear. It protects itself with blame and distraction. But when the mind is kind, it can look directly at itself. It can bear its own imperfections without breaking down. It can say, "Yes, that hurts. Yes, I did that. Yes, I am still valuable." This kind of clarity cleans the mirror, not by scrubbing hard, but by gently wiping. The power of self-compassion is especially strong before bedtime. That's because during the day, your defenses are up. Your roles are active. Your attention is focused outward. But at night, everything softens. The subconscious becomes more accessible. And in that softness, harshness echoes louder. When you fall asleep full of self-criticism, it sticks to your nervous system like a stain. But when you treat yourself with compassion, real, honest compassion, something else happens. The nervous system relaxes, your breathing deepens, and the mind begins to heal itself from within. This does not mean that you should gloss over your mistakes. It means looking at them with warmth instead of shame. Shame paralyzes the mind. Compassion thaws it, not into weakness, but into flexibility. And that flexibility is the starting point for change. Because real transformation doesn't come from self-criticism. It comes from self-confidence. You don't grow because you hate yourself. You grow because you believe you are worthy of care. This is not about saying nice things to yourself just to feel better. It's about being honest. It's about recognizing where you still carry pain that you can't name, where you still criticize yourself for something that is long gone, where you are still trying to earn recognition for yourself. And then, in that moment of realization, you decide to soften. You decide to talk to yourself not as if you were a project, but as if you were a human being. You can do this with gentle sentences, not with affirmations you don't believe in, but with simple truths. That was hard today. I didn't know what else to do. I'm still learning. When spoken sincerely, these words are like warm water on a cold mind. They don't change the facts, but they change the environment in which the facts exist. And it is this change that begins to clean the mirror. This is especially important for old patterns, habits of thinking that have become reflexes, the voice that says, "I'm not good enough. I always mess everything up. Nobody really sees me." These voices don't disappear through logic. They dissolve through kindness, through repeated experiences of being met without attack. And since you can't always rely on the outside world for this, you learn to give yourself this kindness, not just once, but over and over again. Over time, this becomes a nightly ritual. Just before falling asleep, you gently look inside yourself, not to judge, but to take care of yourself. You notice what still feels tense, what is still unresolved, and instead of rushing to fix it, you place your attention on it like a warm hand. That hurts, and I'm here. I see you, and you are not alone. These sentences sound simple, but they are profound, because they interrupt the old conditioning that says you have to be hard on yourself in order to grow. That only guilt brings about change. That shame is the same as responsibility. It is not. Compassion is responsibility without violence. When you give yourself this, your sleep changes, your body feels safer, your mind feels held, and even if nothing is resolved, you come to rest with less resistance. And in this state, healing deepens. Dreams become gentler. The subconscious lets go of old knots because it no longer feels like it is being punished in the dark. This exercise also helps with the inner voice that rejects compassion, the voice that says, "I don't deserve this," or "It's too late." When that voice comes up, don't fight it, you accept it. You say, "You are allowed to be here too." You allow compassion to touch even the part of you that doesn't believe in it, and over time, that part softens too. Self-compassion is not just a technique. It is a relationship, a way of treating yourself, and like any relationship, it grows over time. Sometimes you may forget it, sometimes you may resist it, but the more you return to it, the more natural it becomes, until eventually it is no longer an exercise, but a way of moving through the world, through failures, through successes, through ordinary moments, with less tension, with more honesty, with peace. In Buddhism, there is a saying that goes, "Compassion is the trembling of the heart when it encounters suffering." That includes your suffering, your old feelings of regret, your unspoken fears, your unfulfilled needs. When your heart can tremble for itself, not out of pity, but out of presence, you have begun the real work of liberation. Let this be the last energy you take in during the evening. No more tasks, no more demands, just presence, just warmth, just the willingness to meet yourself where you are without running away, without explanations, without having to be perfect first. This encounter is the cleansing of the mirror. This encounter is healing. And when the mind becomes clear, you no longer see mistakes, but your own light. The light that was always there beneath the stains, not because you deserve it, but because you have stopped covering it up with punishment. You are not broken, you are not behind, you are not failing, you are just learning to see clearly again. And tonight, self-compassion is the cloth that helps you remember that. And after you have wiped the stains from your mind with self-compassion, after you have finally met yourself with gentleness instead of judgment, a softness remains that you may not recognize at first. A stillness that isn't shrouded in fear. A stillness that feels less like absence and more like presence. But the heart, especially one that has been hardened by years of pressure, doesn't always know how to trust this peace. That's why it needs something symbolic, something constant, something sacred. Here, visualization becomes more than just imagination. It becomes healing. Because tonight, you don't have to sleep alone in your head. You can sleep next to Buddha. This is not about faith or religion. It's about the language of the nervous system. The mind doesn't need doctrine. It needs security. It needs symbols that calm, rhythms that soothe, images that convey peace deeper than logic. And in this practice, the presence of the Buddha is not an external God. It is a field of consciousness, a calm intelligence, a radiant presence that sits beside you, not to fix you or judge you, but simply to be with you. The idea of sleeping with Buddha is simple but powerful. It is the practice of inviting an enlightened presence, a presence that is pure calm, pure compassion, and pure wisdom into the space of your rest. Not just as a symbol on a wall, but as a presence in your subconscious. A field of silent knowledge that stays with you as your thoughts dissolve and your body slips into sleep. Before you begin, allow your body to settle. Let your breath lengthen. Let the room become still. And in that stillness, bring forth the image of the Buddha in your mind, not as a statue, not as a distant ideal, but as a peaceful being sitting beside you. His posture is relaxed. His gaze is kind. His presence is unshakably peaceful. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just feel it. Let the image arise naturally. Let the energy of this presence spread around you like warm air. Now pay attention to how your body reacts, not to what your mind says, but to what your body does. Is your breathing slowing down? Are your shoulders dropping? Are your thoughts becoming a little softer? This is your nervous system's response to the presence of calm, and you're not imagining it. You are remembering something ancient, something your body knows but often forgets, that it is allowed to rest in the presence of wisdom. The Buddha does not speak. He does not teach with words. His presence is the teaching. His silence is the message. He sits next to you with full awareness and without judgment. He knows your suffering. He knows your restlessness. And he does not ask you to be anything other than what you are. His presence accepts everything. And this acceptance begins to teach your body to do the same. With this visualization, the space around you begins to change. The air feels safer. Your thoughts feel less important. You are no longer the only one holding yourself through the night. There is support here, not in the form of solutions, but in the form of presence, stable, unshakable presence, and your subconscious begins to listen. As you continue to breathe, allow yourself to engage with this energy. Shift your weight slightly in your imagination towards this calm being, this quiet field of peace. Not because you are seeking comfort, but because your body wants to remember how to rest, how to let go, how to trust that no explanation is needed to be held. The more often you return to this visualization, the more deeply your subconscious mind associates calm with safety. And the deeper this connection becomes, the less effort is required. The nervous system begins to recognize this presence as a signal, as a turning point, as a transition from effort to ease. And just as a child calms down when held by someone who is calm, your body begins to attune itself to the energy of the Buddha, not metaphorically, physiologically. This exercise also works when the image is vague. Even if you don't know exactly what you're seeing, it's not about the clarity of the image, but the clarity of the energy, the tone, the feeling, the certainty that you are not alone in your own mind tonight, that the field beside you holds wisdom that lies beyond words, and that this wisdom is not afraid of what you take to bed with you. You may notice that thoughts arise when this presence settles in. Old worries, old stories, old tensions. This is completely natural. They do not arise to disturb you, but to be calmed. You do not have to resolve them. You do not have to discuss them. Just let them pass through the space between you and this presence. Let them wander back and forth between your breath and their calm gaze. Let them dissolve in the silence that surrounds you both. Over time, this visualization becomes more than just a technique. It becomes a gateway, a way to step out of the narrow box of self-defense and enter a space where everything is seen, everything is held, and nothing is judged. This space is the space of awakened consciousness, and the more often you visit it, the easier it becomes to live there. This exercise is especially effective for the part of you that feels alone, the part that carries too much, that believes it is responsible for everything, that feels that peace must be earned, because the presence of Buddha teaches something without words. Peace is already there. It was never outside of you. You just forgot how to touch it. This does not mean that Buddha will solve your problems. It means that you no longer depend on every problem being solved in order to sleep. You no longer need to be healed before you can rest. You no longer need to understand everything before you can surrender. Because in this space, peace is not the result of repairs. It is the result of being. And even if you forget this presence, it remains. It lives in your breath, in the silence between your thoughts, in the silence behind your worries. You can return to it with a single exhalation, with a single gentle thought. I am not alone in this mind tonight. You can even give this presence a gesture. Maybe it will place a hand on your heart. Maybe it will just sit motionless next to you. Maybe it will mirror your breath until you forget which one of you is breathing. However you feel it, trust it. This is not fantasy. It is the memory of your nervous system. It is spiritual architecture, and it is ancient. Now, let yourself drift. Let the image fade if it wants to fade, or stay. There is no right way. The only instruction is, allow yourself to be surrounded by the presence of enlightened calm as you rest. Don't let your mind take over. Instead, let your consciousness guide you. Let your body remember what it is like to be safe in silence. And when sleep finally comes, let it enter into this sacred presence. Let your dreams arise from this peace. Let your healing begin from this safety, because tonight you are not falling into unconsciousness. You are surrounded by luminous silence. This is what it means to sleep with Buddha. Not next to a person, next to peace itself. And after you have rested next to the quiet presence of enlightened peace, after you have let go of the pressure to fix anything, after you have remembered that safety lies in silence, a deeper power begins to rise quietly from within you. It does not scream. It does not need recognition. It is simply there, strong, calm, present. This is not the loud strength that the world rewards. It is not the kind of strength that overwhelms or coerces. It is the kind of strength that sees pain and does not run away. The kind of strength that speaks softly when the mind is loud. The kind of strength that stands in the storm without having to push it away. That's the gentle warrior within you. And the next exercise will help you hear that voice again, not as a fantasy, but as a real inner strength that already lives within you. For many people, the first voice they hear within themselves is harsh. It comments, it criticizes, it compares, it tells stories that are meant to protect, but are often hurtful. You're not doing enough. You should be better by now. What's wrong with you? These phrases become so normal that their damage becomes invisible. They don't sound aggressive, but they gnaw quietly at the soul. They rob you of self-confidence. They cloud your presence, and over time they form a background noise that is impossible to escape. However, Buddhist practice does not try to combat this inner voice with even more noise. It does not drown out the critic. It does not shame the shamer. It does something much more powerful. It listens. Not to agree, but to understand. To clearly recognize what the voice is trying to protect. To meet the underlying fear with clarity instead of anger. Because harsh self-talk is, in most cases, nothing more than fearful talk. It is the mind trying to keep itself safe by making itself small. It tries to avoid pain by playing it out first. This is where the gentle warrior comes in. An inner presence that does not attack the pain, but refuses to bow to it. A voice that does not speak from perfection, but from consistency. From a kind of inner resilience that does not need permission to exist. This voice does not have to be loud. It just has to be consistent. And the more it is practiced, the more it replaces the old narratives with new ones. Narratives that are not rooted in fear, but in truth. To cultivate this voice, start by noticing when the inner critic pops up. Not to silence it, but to pause, to take a step back. You hear the thought, "I'm not doing enough." And instead of reacting, you breathe. You listen, and then you ask, "Is that really true?" Or, "Would I say that to someone I love?" These questions create space, and in that space, the gentle warrior has room to speak. The warrior's voice doesn't say, "Everything is perfect." It says, "This is hard, but I can do this." It says, "I've fallen down before and gotten back up." It says, "I am not my worst moment." These aren't motivational slogans. They're reminders. Anchors. They anchor you back to a deeper part of yourself that knows how to keep going, not with force, but with consistency. This exercise isn't about pretending to be fearless. It's about learning how to deal with fear without breaking down. Buddhist courage does not mean being above emotions. It means staying present with emotions without letting them overwhelm you. This is the way of the warrior, not the way of aggression, but the way of presence. The one who feels everything and yet chooses to return, who chooses to speak gently, who chooses to stay. This becomes especially important at night, because that's when the harsh voice often gets louder. When the mind is quiet, old patterns emerge, and if you're not careful, the last words you hear before falling asleep are the ones that hurt. But you can change that. You can counter that voice with a new one that says, "You've done enough for today," or "You don't have to be perfect to be valuable." These words may feel unfamiliar at first, but the more you hear them, the more you believe them. The gentle warrior also teaches boundaries, not just toward others, but also toward your own mind. He knows when to say, "This thought doesn't belong here," not by suppressing it, but by refusing to feed it. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every story deserves your belief, and the warrior knows how to distance themselves from what no longer serves them, without guilt, without drama, just with calm, clear rejection. This is not spiritual evasion. This is maturity. The maturity to know the difference between self-reflection and self-harm, the difference between honest reflection and emotional self-punishment. The gentle warrior can see the truth without turning it into a weapon. He sees clearly without that clarity becoming cruel, and that is what makes true healing possible. Over time, this voice becomes your inner guide, not one that constantly promises you happiness, but one that promises not to abandon you in difficult times, one that says, "You're still here, that's enough." One that whispers strength to you when everything else collapses. You can practice this in small steps. When you make a mistake, pause. Notice your first thought, then choose a new one. That didn't go as I wanted it to, but I'm learning. When you feel overwhelmed, pause. I'm allowed to rest. When you doubt your path, pause. I don't have to figure everything out tonight. In these moments, the warrior speaks, not with armor, but with presence, not with certainty, but with care. This also changes how you respond to others, because the gentler you speak to yourself, the gentler you speak to the world. You no longer need others to confirm your worth. You no longer respond from a place of inner attack, and you begin to show the same calm resilience to those around you, not by fixing them, but by being a reliable presence in their storm. The gentle warrior within you doesn't always look brave. Sometimes they look calm. Sometimes they look like they're walking away. Sometimes they look like they're crying without shame. But underneath it all is a strength that is deeper than fear. A strength that says, "I can feel this, I can live with this, and I can keep going." This kind of strength doesn't happen overnight. It happens through small decisions, in thousands of moments when you replace the old story with a new one, when you choose presence over panic, when you choose compassion over criticism, and when you slowly but surely learn that your strength never lay in your ability to fight. It lay in your ability to remain kind. So tonight, when that harsh voice returns, meet it, not with fire, not with resistance, just with the quiet voice that says, "I see you, but I'm choosing something else right now." That is the voice of the warrior, calm, gentle, unshakable, and it lives within you. And once the inner warrior finds its voice, once self-kindness replaces the need for inner aggression, something unexpected begins to change. You no longer feel that you have to earn your place in the world through perfection. The constant need to prove yourself begins to dissolve. The pressure to do everything right, to win, to control every outcome loses its hold. And in this quiet liberation, another truth emerges. Peace is not found in results. It is found in our relationship to them. Here we begin the practice of joyful detachment from results. A lesson in freedom that the world rarely teaches, but that Buddhism has been whispering for centuries. Every day, most people act out of a sense of evaluation. The decision to work, speak, move, rest, or even care about something is filtered through the lens of the question, "What's in it for me?" Results become the driving force. Effort is only considered valuable if it leads to recognition, reward, or success. But behind this way of life lies a mind that quietly breaks under pressure. Because results are unpredictable. No matter how hard you try, there are factors you cannot control. And if all your happiness is tied to these results, you end up dependent on things you should never have held on to in the first place. Buddhist philosophy offers something radically different. It teaches that effort is enough in itself. That intention, pure, honest, grounded, is a complete action. Karma is not a scorecard in the literal sense. It is a cycle, a movement. Every action sows a seed, but you have no control over the weather. You have no control over the timing. You only have influence over the sowing. And when you truly understand that, peace returns. Joyful detachment does not mean that you stop caring. It means that you stop clinging. It means that you show up fully with your whole heart, with presence and purpose, and then let go. You do your best without attaching your value to what happens next. You rest in the action, not in the outcome. And this change does not make you lazy. It makes you free. This kind of detachment is not numbness. It is clarity. It is knowing the difference between what belongs to you and what does not. Your efforts belong to you. Your values belong to you. Your integrity is yours. The results, they don't belong to you. They never did. And letting go of that illusion doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger, because your energy no longer flows into fears, but into informed, meaningful actions. To practice this, start by observing the moments when your mind starts to measure. You catch the voice that says, "Will this be good enough? Will they notice? What if I fail?" Instead of chasing these thoughts, pause. Return to your breath. Ask yourself, what can I give here? Not to get something, but to give something, and hold on to that. When you focus on giving, the moment opens up. You become more present. You feel more alive. And you act from a sense of wholeness, not from desperation. This wholeness is what Buddhist teachings refer to as right effort. It is not the effort to force something. It is the effort to align yourself, to know why you are doing what you are doing, and to be okay with that, even if it leads to something unexpected. This is especially important in the evening, because when the day comes to an end, the mind often begins to review what worked, what didn't work, and what needs to be changed. This reflection can be helpful, but when it becomes an evaluation, a list of wins and losses, it becomes suffering. Joyful detachment means not ending the day with a report card, but with a bow. I was there. I remained honest. I tried. That's enough. And when that really is enough, something else emerges. Joy. Not the joy of victory, but the joy of being. The joy of having remained true to yourself, of not having betrayed yourself for results, of having given what you had and simply letting the rest happen. This also changes your relationships. When you let go of your attachment to how other people react, when you stop needing recognition, validation, or control over their feelings, you love more purely. You listen better. You stop controlling others and start meeting them. And that presence creates a connection that results could never achieve. Even your goals shift. You still work, you still grow, but the fuel changes. You no longer climb to escape yourself. You move forward because movement is part of life, and every step becomes a reward. Not the finish line, but the journey there. The experience of walking your path without carrying the burden of expectations. That doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It means your dreams become lighter. They inspire you instead of weighing you down. They guide you without enslaving you. And you learn to hold them like you hold a bird in your hand, gently, with your fingers open. You let them breathe. You let them go when they need to go. You trust that they will come back when they are meant to be yours. And if they don't, something better will grow in their place. One of the most powerful teachings of Buddhism is let go of the fruits of your actions. That doesn't mean you shouldn't care about results. It means you shouldn't tie your identity to them. Don't let success blind you or failure define you. You are not your results. You are the consciousness behind them, the steady flame that keeps reappearing no matter what the world reflects back to you. This kind of detachment also reduces anxiety, because most fears arise from the unknown, from what might happen if things don't go the way you imagine. But when you stop tying your peace to results, fear has nowhere to fall. You are no longer afraid of failure, because failure is no longer a threat to your worth. It's just another part of the journey. In the evening, this exercise becomes a calming influence, a reminder that your efforts were enough, that the seeds you sowed today may not sprout tomorrow, but they were still sacred, that you don't have to chase validation, fix something, or hold on to something. You can rest. You can breathe. You can let the world move without trying to hold it still. And over time, you begin to live that way. You begin to speak without rehearsing, to act without performing, to give without fear of lack. You stop measuring your life by external results and begin to measure it by your inner alignment, by how fully you were present, by how often you returned to the present moment, by how kindly you spoke to yourself when things didn't go as planned. Joyful detachment does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming wise. It means knowing that the more you let go, the more life flows. The more you let go, the more you receive. And the more you trust the timing of things, the more peace becomes your constant companion. So let go gently tonight. Let go, not because you are tired, but because you finally have clarity. Let go because you have done your part, because you no longer have to carry the future on your shoulders. Let the seed rest in the earth. Let the roots find their own way. Trust the unfolding, because joy, true joy, does not come from what happens. It comes from how you respond to what happens, with presence, with courage, and with a heart that is not attached to outcomes. And once you let go of the outcomes, once you let go of the pressure to control what comes next, something begins to stir beneath the surface. A new space opens up. A space where thoughts previously flitted around, trying to predict, protect, and prove. But even when you learn to loosen your grip on results, something remains. Thoughts that feel heavy, emotions that linger long after the moment has passed. Not because they are true, but because they are familiar. And here, in this quiet reflection, comes one of the most important changes of all. Learning how to transform these negative thoughts, not by escaping them, but by turning them into wisdom. Transforming mental clutter into clarity. Here, growth doesn't just happen. It emerges from what once weighed you down. Buddhism does not promise a life without negative thoughts. The mind will always produce them. That is its job. It reacts, it remembers, it predicts. But Buddhism teaches that these thoughts are not the enemy. They are not signs of failure. They are opportunities. When you meet them with presence, every difficult thought becomes material. And like compost in the garden, what looks like waste can nourish something beautiful, if you look at it with the right eyes. The first step in this kind of transformation is observation. Before you can recycle something, you have to recognize it. Most people either fight their negative thoughts or let them consume them. They try to fight them, suppress them, ignore them, or they identify completely with the voice and believe every word. But there is another way, the middle way, the Buddhist way, the way of observing without identifying. Seeing a thought arise and gently naming it. That is fear. That is a judgment. That is shame. Without flinching, without adding a story, just seeing clearly. This clarity alone initiates transformation. Because when something is named without resistance, it loses its power. It ceases to be a shadow and becomes a form. And once it has a form, you can hold on to it. You can examine it. You can begin to understand it, not through analysis, but through awareness. The next step is to question, not with accusations, but with curiosity. Where does this thought come from? What is it protecting me from? Is there any truth behind it, or is it just something familiar? This curiosity is not about fixing or judging, but about learning, because every negative thought contains information, not always about the world, but about the inner world, about unfulfilled needs, unspoken fears, inherited stories, and when you listen with compassion, you begin to see the roots. From here, reinterpretation becomes possible. It's not about sugarcoating anything. It's not about turning the thought into a forced positive affirmation. It's about looking at it through a wider lens, a Buddhist lens, one that recognizes impermanence, interdependence, the non-solidity of the self. For example, if the thought is, "I always mess everything up," you can pause and reinterpret it. This is a moment of pain, not a permanent truth. Part of me feels like a failure, but that part is not my whole self. Or, if the thought is, "No one cares about me," you can soften it to, "That's the voice of loneliness. It's real, but it's not reality. I feel disconnected, but connection is still possible." These reframes aren't fake. They're clarifications. They remove the dust so you can see what's underneath. Every time you do this, you not only avoid negativity, you transform it. You turn reactivity into reflection, pain into perspective. Every thought becomes a door, not a wall, and the more you walk through those doors, the stronger your insight becomes. This process also changes the wiring of your brain. Neuroscience confirms what Buddhism has taught for centuries. The thoughts you repeatedly dwell on become your brain's preferred pathways. And when you recycle negativity through presence and reinterpretation, you create new pathways, not ones based on denial, but ones rooted in clarity. Your basic attitude shifts from reactivity to responsiveness, from suffering to wisdom. This also changes your relationship with your past. Regret, guilt, shame, all of these come from old thoughts that haven't been processed. They persist because they've never been viewed through the lens of growth. But when you revisit these memories with this new approach, something changes. You can say, "Now I understand what I didn't know then." Or, "That part of me was suffering, it wasn't broken." And this new perspective allows you to let go. Not forget, but understand. And understanding heals. In the evening, this exercise becomes a cleansing ritual. You notice which thoughts are still circling, the ones that feel unresolved, the ones that make your chest tighten. And instead of running away from them or trying to silence them, you sit down with them. You say, "What are you trying to show me?" Not out of fear, but out of compassion. And the thought that has now become visible begins to dissolve. Sometimes the thought doesn't give a clear answer. That's okay. Sometimes it just wants to be seen. And in that seeing, its energy changes. The mind no longer needs to hold on to it. The body no longer needs to resist it. And sleep becomes deeper because the weight has been acknowledged. This process also brings greater emotional maturity because you stop wanting every thought to be perfect. You stop curating your mind. You realize that negative thoughts are part of the landscape, but they don't determine the weather. They pass, they evolve, and when you meet them with presence, they can even be instructive. Recycling negativity does not mean accepting suffering. It means using what arises to understand yourself more deeply. It means not wasting pain, not just letting discomfort pass, but turning it into fuel, into clarity, into compassion. And it's not just about personal healing. The more you practice this internally, the more skilled you become at dealing with others. You recognize their negativity as something familiar. You don't react to their anger or fear. You see it. You hold it as firmly as you have learned to hold your own. And this holding creates space. Space for connection. Space for change. This kind of inner work is subtle, but it creates a resilience that nothing can shake. Because now you know that even in the midst of difficulties, growth is possible. That clarity is still available. That even your worst moments can lead to the most beautiful insights. So tonight, let your thoughts flow freely. Not to indulge in negativity, but to give it space to be seen. Hold every heavy thought in the palms of your consciousness. Name every fear. Meet every judgment with curiosity. And then Gently choose to reinterpret, to reframe, to invest the energy in something new. You are not here to control every thought. You are here to encounter them, to listen, to learn, and to transform what once felt like a burden into a source of light. This is mental recycling. This is how the mind becomes a garden, not by pulling out the weeds, but by turning them into nutrients. Thought by thought, breath by breath, you grow. And once negative thoughts have been recognized, softened, and gently transformed into clarity, a new kind of calmness sets in. Not just the absence of pain, but the presence of something deeper. This does not come about through effort. It is not built up through affirmations. It simply appears like a gentle silence after a storm, a peace that does not consist of thoughts, but of what exists between them. This soft and sacred space is often overlooked, but it is always there, right beneath the noise, right behind the last word. This is the bliss in the gap, and the deeper you rest in it, the more you discover that peace does not need to be created. It just needs to be noticed. Most people believe that peace is something that must be achieved, something you build up by accumulating enough good habits or thinking enough positive thoughts. But Buddhist meditation reveals a different truth. Peace is already there, beneath the movement, beneath the thinking. It is not the product of silence. It is silence itself. It is the silence between sentences, the pause between inhaling and exhaling, the tiny moment between the end of one thought and the beginning of the next. These moments seem small, almost invisible, but they are the gateway to something big. The challenge is not that these gaps do not exist. The challenge is that the mind is trained to rush past them, to fill them, never allowing the silence to last long enough for the truth to emerge. Thought by thought, the mind builds a wall of mental noise, and the space behind it is forgotten. But with mindfulness, with gentle observation, these cracks begin to widen, and what shines through is not emptiness, but calm. The first step to gaining access to this space is to learn to slow down. Not your body, your attention. Observe the rhythm of your thoughts without getting carried away by them. Sit still and observe the patterns of your mind. It jumps, it tells stories, it repeats itself. But if you sit still long enough, you will notice something strange. There is a flicker between thoughts, a pause, an empty moment that cannot be described. That is the gap. It is not long, it does not last long, but it is real, and it holds more peace than any sentence could ever contain. Buddhist meditation often focuses on this space, not to hold on to it, but to remember it, to become familiar with it, because the more familiar it becomes, the more the mind begins to settle into it, like sliding into a warm bath, not to drown, but to dissolve the constant urge to explain, to name, to fix. The space between thoughts contains no labels, no agenda, and that's why it feels like freedom. You can perceive this space in everyday life, when drinking tea, when walking slowly, when watching the sun move across the ground. These moments require no effort. They require attention. And in this attention, the mind slows down all by itself. The gaps between thoughts become longer. You don't try to stop the thoughts. You simply rest in the space that is already there when they fall silent for a moment. This exercise is particularly effective at night. As the body softens and the mind begins to wander, the gaps occur more frequently, between memories, between fears, even between the words of your inner monologue. And when you are aware of this, you can rest in these moments, as if stepping stones into sleep. You don't have to force them, just notice them, allow them to be. This space is not boring. It is not empty. It is alive. It hums with clarity. It vibrates with peace. Because it does not consist of thoughts, it is the consciousness that holds the thoughts. And this consciousness is not touched by the contents of the mind. Joy, sadness, fear, plans, all of these rise and fall, but the space itself remains unchanged. When you rest in this space more often, something begins to change. You identify less with your thoughts and more with your consciousness. You stop believing every sentence your mind says. You begin to understand that not all thoughts need your attention, that most of them are echoes, habits, and that beneath them lies something deeper, something real. This does not mean that you reject thinking. Thoughts are useful, necessary, but they are not you. They are not your peace. They are just waves. And beneath these waves lies an ocean, still, calm. It holds everything without holding on to anything. Even the breath becomes a gateway to this space. At the end of the exhalation, there is a pause, a natural silence before the next breath comes. This pause is the gap. And when you let your attention rest there, even for just a few seconds, you will feel it. The body relaxes, the chest opens, the thoughts become still. Not because you have silenced them, but because you have entered a space where they are no longer needed. This exercise also brings perspective. Because when you spend time in the gap, you begin to realize how fleeting every thought is, how quickly they come and go. And when you realize that, you stop clinging to them so tightly. You stop identifying with every fear, every doubt, every reaction. You realize, this too shall pass, because it always does, because it always has. And in this realization, peace is no longer fragile. It becomes your foundation, your home. You carry it with you, not because you created it, but because you stopped covering it up. In Buddhist teaching, there is a saying, "The silence before the word is the sound of truth." This silence is what lives in the gap. It does not speak, it does not argue, but it conveys something unmistakable, that you are already whole, that nothing is missing in this moment, that peace is not something you earn, but something you return to. It doesn't have to be complicated. The next time you sit, walk, or lie down, just pay attention to the edges. The silence after a thought ends. The space before the next one begins. Stay there. Even if it's just for a breath, even if it's just the blink of an eye. And let that silence teach you what no book ever could. This exercise doesn't require perfect posture or hours of meditation. It requires presence, it requires curiosity, and it requires a willingness not to fill every gap with something you have to do, say, or solve. The more you rest in this space, the more you trust it. And the more you trust it, the more it reveals itself to you. Until finally, the gap is no longer just a moment, but becomes a way of seeing, a way of being, a place you carry with you. As your thoughts slow down tonight, pay attention to the silence between them. Pay attention to the space between your breaths, the pause before a dream begins, and let yourself drift there. Rest in the calm that is already waiting for you, not at the end of your thoughts, but in the spaces between them. This is bliss in the gap, and it has always been yours. And when you begin to feel the silence between your thoughts, when you taste the quiet truth hidden in every pause, a deeper understanding emerges. It is not just the silence that brings peace, it is the absence of striving. The mind is not calm simply because it is quiet. It is calm because, for once, it is not striving for anything. Not for the next solution, the next moment, the next improvement. In the space between thoughts, there is no striving, and in that space, something radical can finally be seen clearly. This moment, exactly as it is already enough. Not because it is perfect, not because it fulfills all your hopes, but because the desire for more has always been the obstacle to peace. The next lesson reveals this truth in its most luminous form, the radiance of enough. The human mind is conditioned to want, to reach forward, to imagine what is missing. This impulse is not evil, it is natural. It helped our ancestors survive, build, and improve. But it also created a loop that says happiness is somewhere else, somewhere out of our reach. I'll feel peace when I've achieved that. I'll feel joy when I've sorted that out. I'll finally be able to relax when I've earned it. And so the chase begins, and it never ends. Buddhist wisdom, however, does not follow this path. It pauses. It turns around. It looks directly at the moment and says, "This is it." Not in resignation, but in awe. Because what makes this moment special is not its content. It is your willingness to meet it without expectations. Realizing that enough is enough does not mean that nothing should change. It does not mean complacency. It means that your peace no longer depends on change. You are still moving, you are still growing, but not out of a lack, not out of a belief that something is missing. You act out of abundance, not out of hunger, and that change is everything. This practice begins with presence, being aware of the moment without adding anything. Sitting, breathing, feeling, and letting go of the story that something else is needed right now. This story is the source of tension. Even in peaceful moments, it whispers, more would be better. But the moment you stop striving for something better, you encounter the richness that is already there. The mind often resists this. It believes that if you stop trying, you will become lazy or lost, that you will lose your edge. But this belief is rooted in fear, not truth. In reality, people who rest in contentment are not passive. They are powerful. Because their energy is not scattered, their actions are clear, their presence is strong. They don't chase peace, they embody it. To practice this, pay attention to how often your mind says, "Not yet," "Almost," "Just a little more." Then pause, breathe, ask yourself, what if nothing changed right now? Could this moment still be complete? You may not hear a clear yes, but in the pause, in the question, something settles. Something lets go. You can also use your senses to enter into contentment. Feel the air on your skin, the weight of your body, the sounds around you. These details are always there, but they are overlooked. When you pay attention to them without judgment, you train your mind to receive rather than strive. And through receiving, contentment becomes real. This also changes your relationship to the future. Instead of running toward it, you walk with it. You don't demand that it complete you, you let it unfold without despair. This trust reduces anxiety, because the belief that the future must bring something specific is the root of so much stress. But when you stop needing the next thing to save you, the present begins to shine. In Buddhism, this is called santuti, contentment. It is a radical state of peace that does not come from getting more, but from no longer needing more. It is not apathy. It is not detachment from life. It is intimacy with life. You are so completely connected to what is that you stop constantly trying to rearrange it. This also changes your self-perception. You stop measuring yourself solely by your progress. You begin to realize that value is not linked to improvement, that you are not a project that needs to be perfected. You are already a whole being unfolding. You can evolve without constantly feeling inadequate. Because you have remembered something sacred, you no longer have to become something in order to deserve peace. Even relationships are affected by this. When you are no longer dependent on others to fill the feeling of inadequacy, you love more freely. You listen without wanting to get something out of it. You give without having hidden expectations, and you accept without feeling guilty. This creates space for real connections, not based on filling the other person's emptiness, but on sharing each other's fullness. In the evening, this exercise becomes a form of liberation. At the end of the day, the mind may want to evaluate, calculate, or regret, but you can give it a new instruction. This day was enough. Not perfect, not everything you hoped for, but enough to rest, enough to let go. And when you rest from that place, sleep becomes deeper, dreams become kinder, because the body stops fighting against what hasn't been finished. That doesn't mean you never strive for anything again, but the striving is different. It's clearer. It's not desperation, it's expression. You don't grow to fix something that's broken, but to expand something that's already alive. And that kind of growth feels light, joyful, and rooted in gratitude. You can reinforce this by giving yourself little reminders throughout the day. A pause with your hand on your heart, a whisper to your own mind. This is enough. These aren't just nice sayings. You are reprogramming your nervous system. You are retraining your subconscious mind. You are replacing the endless loop of lack with a calm rhythm of peace. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that says, the seeker eventually finds that what he has been searching for has always been within him. And that is true. The desire for more is not satisfied by getting more. It ends when you realize that you never really lacked anything. It was just your mind telling you that. This realization cannot be forced, but it can be invited. It can be felt. And the more you rest in the presence of this moment, without it having to be anything else, the more it shines. Not like a spotlight, but like the soft glow of a candle that never has to burn brighter to be beautiful. So tonight, let your mind rest in contentment. Let your breath be complete. Let the moment embrace you unchanged. Let go of striving. Don't let peace come as a reward. Let it come as a return. Because when the desire for more disappears, the light you've been searching for remains. And it was there all along.